Honestly, I just can't shut up. I don't know how to do these videos fast. I can't do any of this fast. I love books. I love yapping. I can't help it. Hey, my name is Kaylee. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is Read Rant Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. If you are familiar with my channel, that means I do beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdowns of a whole bunch of books. Today, though, we are continuing my casual classics series where I read classical books and then I tell you all about it in like a super casual, friendly, FaceTimey way, so that if you missed out on these classics, you get to hear about it. You can see what the hype is and why they have stood the test of time and not have to read 600-page books that were published in 1847. For example, today's book is Jane Eyre, published by Charlotte Bronte, that actually was published in 1847. Now, I have to admit, I was very ignorant about the Bronte sisters until I started doing research for this video. I'm not gonna lie, I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't realize that Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre were written by two different people. I also didn't know that they had a third sister. So turns out, there's a whole lot I was missing out on. I'm going to tell you about that real quick, and then I'll give you the stats about this book. Hopefully, fingers crossed, my intention was to do to fit all three of the Bronte sisters' books into one video, but as I read them and took notes and was pulling quotes and everything, I ended up at 68 pages of notes in total for these books, to include like chapter summaries and then like citations to quotes and whatnot. So I don't think that's going to be possible unless I just do a marathon video for you guys. Hey guys, editing Kaylee here. So really only ended up doing Jane Eyre. So this entire video is just of that book. And then over the next couple of Mondays, I'll do the other two. Okay, enjoy. Bye. To begin, I just want to give you some context about the sisters. Also, want to give the caveat here, I am not a professional. Neither of my degrees are in English. I don't know what I'm talking about. I read some Wikipedia articles. I read Wikipedia. I found some other commentary and papers that were written about these women. But ultimately, don't come at me sideways. I'm just trying to share knowledge. I'm just here to tell you about my new micro obsession. The three Bronte sisters that we're going to be talking about. There's Charlotte, who wrote Jane Eyre, Emily, who wrote Wuthering Heights, and then the third sister is the one that I didn't know existed, and that was Anne. There's kind of a reason for it. Let's unpack it. So these three had three siblings. They had two oldest sisters and then a brother named Patrick. So all of the girls got sent away to essentially a boarding school. While at said boarding school, the two oldest sisters contracted tuberculosis and died at a very young age. That is said to have inspired the girls' school that is talked about in Jane Eyre. Now we're down to four siblings. They all grew up writing together. They had this little world that they created, and they would all kind of take turns building chapters and expanding on this little universe that they had, which is the cutest sibling bonding thing I could ever imagine. And the sisters all wrote poetry together. That was their very first published work. It was a joint effort. Jump to 1847. The women are in their 20s. All three of them write their own books. Again, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, and Anne wrote a book called Agnes Grey. These three books get published at essentially the same time. I'm not talking about Agnes Grey because I didn't vibe with that one quite as much. Personally, I love... Hey, editing Kaylee, yet again, I know it's been so long. So I realized, 10 minutes into editing, I continue to slaughter the name of the tenant of Wildfell Hall, and I keep saying Windfell. I don't know how many times I do it in this video. God forbid, I am so sorry. I would just like to acknowledge that I'm stupid. So that's all. Thanks. Bye. That is probably my favorite of these three books. Call it the contrarian in me. Call it my inner hipster. Anne is my favorite of the Bronte sisters. I know. We'll get there. We'll unpack it. So Anne published The Tenant at Windfell Hall in 1848. After publishing these books, almost immediately, within a year of publication of each of these, Emily dies of tuberculosis, and so does Anne. Who else dies in that time frame? The brother Patrick. All of the siblings now, except for Charlotte, have died by the time that we get to 1849. Weight of the world is on Charlotte's shoulders as the only surviving sibling, as all of these books continue to gain popularity. Charlotte makes the decision to continue publishing, obviously, her own works, as well as Wuthering Heights by Emily and Agnes Grey by Anne. She made the decision to not continue to republish or like create new editions of, or however the phrasing works, The Tenant of Winfield Hall by Anne. So Anne's last great work, right before she passes away, Charlotte makes the decision to not continue to share that with the world because ultimately, she said, that's not reflective of my sister. There's a lot of, I guess, discourse from what I was able to see about this decision and why she did it. If it was out of jealousy, if it was out of like truly looking out for the image of her sister and wanting the right memory of her and for her like sweet, kind softness to not be tainted by this crazy story. Okay, so that's why that one kind of like fell off a little bit. Obviously, it came around and continued to get published again, but absolute tragedy just struck upon this family. And it's not like it gets any better. 6 years later, Charlotte dies while she's pregnant. Girl, so it's just her dad. It's literally just her father. Their mother had died at some point during that whole story as well. Just the dad. He's lost 6 children and his wife. Charlotte's husband, they were relatively newlyweds. I think right at a year or so. When she had passed away, they had known each other for quite a while though. Like I think they had grown up together or something. But regardless, he ended up like taking care of her father until he passed away. I was like, oh my God, dude, the tragedy in this family, but also the talent. Absolutely insane. So now that I got my context of these sisters out of the way, going into Jane Eyre specifically, right? Charlotte's book, arguably the most popular because she lived the longest and was able to market it and continue doing these editions and blah, 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 right? The book title is Jane Eyre, an autobiography. It's more of like an autobiography, quote unquote, autobiography of the main character, Jane Eyre. But there is said to be a lot of inspiration or things that are pulled from Charlotte's life. I would like to note, before I actually get into the book for you, I did find this one interesting little tidbit where Charlotte had spent her whole life writing letters to her friend Ellen. It was a lifelong friendship that they had been friends since like school. It was a schoolmate and they'd written letters to each other like their whole life. 350 of the 500 letters that Charlotte wrote to Ellen have been saved. Charlotte's husband burned all of the letters that Ellen had sent to Charlotte. And you read some of the excerpts from the ones like from Charlotte to Ellen, and it's a little gay. It is very romantic, and I'm not trying to, obviously no assumptions or anything, like I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? I'm not putting anything on anybody. I'm just saying, let me just read it to you. I'm going to read you some of these quotes. What shall I do without you? How long are we likely to be separated? Why are we to be denied each other's society? I long to be with you. Why are we to be divided? Surely, Ellen, it must be because we are in danger of loving each other too well. Another excerpt. Ellen, I wish I could live with you always. I begin to cling to you more fondly than I ever did. If we had but a cottage and competency of our own, I do think that we would live and love on till death without being dependent on any third person for happiness. And lastly, how sorely my heart longs for you, I need not say, less than ever I can taste or know pleasure till this work is wound up. And yet I often sit up in bed at night thinking of and wishing for you. So I'm not judging anything. I'm just saying I feel like almost every single of these like big name literary women from way back in the day have all had a little bit of questionable female relationships. And I don't think it's a coincidence. It's just an interesting thing with the context, with knowing the family. Let's talk about the book specifically, Jane Eyre. As I said, this was published in 1847. It has 500 to 600 pages, depending on what like editions and versions that you're looking at. It is currently sitting on Goodreads at a 4.15 with 2.2 million ratings. And if you are unfamiliar of what the book is, like you've just heard the title, which is how I was for a long time, I'll read you the description and then we'll get into the book itself. Charlotte Bronte tells the story of an orphaned Jane Eyre who grew up in the home of her heartless aunt, enduring loneliness and cruelty. This troubled childhood strengthens Jane's natural independence and spirit, which proved necessary when she finds employment as a governess to the young ward of Byronic brooding Mr. Rochester. As her feelings for Rochester develop, Jane gradually uncovers Thornfield Hall's terrible secret, forcing her to make a choice. Should she stay with Rochester and live with the consequences, or follow her convictions, even if it means leaving the man she loves? A novel of intense power and intrigue, Jane Eyre dazzled readers with its passionate depiction of a woman's search for equality and freedom. Our book opens with Jane Eyre as a grown woman recounting her childhood. So this is where an autobiography piece comes in at. She begins talking about how when she was 10 years old, she was an orphan and she lived with her aunt, Mrs. Reed. She had 3 cousins that lived there with her. They were all super rich, super snooty, super rude, and treated her like trash. Like she was just this ungrateful extra mouth to feed and was just perceived as being disobedient, and nobody really liked her. Her male cousin, John, he was older than her, always bullied her, always talked crap to her. And then her 2 female cousins aren't allowed to play with her because Mrs. Reed is afraid that they're going to become troublesome kids just like Jane is, even though objectively she hasn't really done anything, but we'll talk about it. It's actually hilarious. She definitely had some sass, which I love. But she comforts herself by reading, right? She just minds her own business and just reads all the time. On this particular day, though, her cousin John comes in, throws the book on the ground. She sticks up for herself, finally pushes back. John goes crying to Mrs. Reed and completely blames Jane, and he's like, oh no, it was unprovoked, she's just a monster. Mrs. Reed punishes her by locking her in the red room. Scary. In chapter 2, it's Jane locked in the red room, and she is horrified. This is the room that her Uncle Reed died in 9 years ago, and it has just felt haunted and seemed haunted ever since. So when she's in here, she just starts having a panic attack and ends up passing out. Like she faints from emotional exhaustion. Now, grown-up Jane, in doing a reflection of this moment, is kind of coming to terms with how at the time she didn't understand the injustice of the world and why she had to deal with what she had dealt with and why people would be so rude to her. But as an adult, she's able to see it a little bit better. Her parents died when she was very, very young, and Uncle Reed took her in. When he passed away 9 years ago, he made Mrs. Reed promise him that she will take care of Jane as her own, or as their own, right? Obviously not what happened at all. Chapter 3, Jane wakes up from this emotional exhaustion, and she's in a bed in the nursery, and she's being taken care of by the family doctor, Mr. Lloyd. He's trying to figure out what happened exactly. She says, she was afraid of Uncle Reed's ghost and just how unhappy she is living at Gateshead. That's the name of the house. And she's just not doing well in that regard. And the doctor's response is to call her ungrateful and emotionally disturbed, but he's trying to be nice about it. But you can only really be so nice when you're saying such terrible things to a 10-year-old. He's like, well, why don't you go and live with your other relatives? Jane's mother came from a rich family, a rich background, and married, I don't want to say below her class because it sounds horrendous, but that's what it was. She married a relatively poor man. So when her parents died, right, Uncle Reed is the mom's brother, and so the doctor's like, well, why don't you go and live with your dad's family, who are all poor? And that horrifies Jane. Like, that scares Jane to go from living this like glitz and glam, not that it's necessarily even that, I mean, we're in the freaking 1840s, right? But comfort, to going and living in poverty isn't really like a logical option, especially for a child. Like, they're not going to willingly choose to struggle, right? Because her mother married below their class, the father was so mad, he wrote his daughter out of the will. So that's why Jane has no money, right? Because she didn't inherit anything from her family. Like, she's really was kind of this like outcast sister, right? She was the daughter of the outcast sister. So she is, in that time period, kind of viewed as a burden and as like the reject of the family, right? Then it becomes, well, send her to boarding school. The plan is to send her to this boarding school. So the headmaster of the boarding school comes and visits to like give an interview to her, talk to Mrs. Reed, really kind of figure out the vibe and how they're going to manage her at this school. So he comes and he's giving her this interview. She's a little sassy, she's a little pushy backy, and he says, There's no sight so sad as that of a naughty child, especially a naughty little girl. Do you know where the wicked go after death? They go to hell, was my ready and orthodox answer. And what is hell? Can you tell me that? A pit full of fire. I don't know how to do a little kid's voice, so we're just going to do the grown woman voice, okay? I don't want to make this like cartoony. So a pit full of fire, and should you like to fall into that pit and be burning there forever? No, sir. What must you do to avoid it? I deliberated a moment. My answer, when it did come, was objectionable. I must keep in good health and not die. Arguably the hardest sentence I think that a 10-year-old could have possibly said back. That is so funny to me. How do you not go to hell? You don't die. With that, he goes to leave, and Mrs. Reed gives him a heads up of like, hey, she has a tendency to deceit, i.e., she's a liar, she's dramatic, don't listen to her. Like, when you take her there, like, you need to give everybody a heads up that she's just a big old faker. He says, okay, don't worry, I'll be sure to share word of her character across the staff. Jane, in response to this, confronts her aunt, and she says, I am not deceitful. If I were, I should say that I loved you. But I declare I do not love you. I dislike you the worst of anybody in the world except John Reed, her male cousin. And Mrs. Reed's hand lay on her work inactive. Her eye of ice continued to dwell freezingly on mine. What more have you to say? She asked, rather in the tone in which a person might address an opponent of adult age than such that is ordinarily used to a child. That eye of hers, that voice stirred every antipathy I had. Shaking from head to foot, thrilled with ungovernable excitement, I continued, I am glad you are of no relation of mine. I will never call you aunt again as long as I live. I will never come to see you when I am grown up. And if anyone asks me how I liked you and how you treated me, I will say the very thought of you makes me sick, and that you have treated me with miserable cruelty. How dare you affirm that, Jane Eyre? How dare I? Mrs. Reed? How dare I? Because it is the truth. You think I have no feelings and that I can do without one bit of love or kindness, but I cannot live so, and you have no pity. I shall remember how you thrust me back, roughly and violently thrust me back into the red room and locked me up there to my dying day, though I was in agony, though I cried out while suffocating with distress, and that punishment you made me suffer because your wicked boy struck me, knocked me down for nothing. I will tell anybody who asks me questions that exact tale. People think you a good woman, but you are bad, hard-hearted, you are deceitful. just read her aunt. If you need a translation for that in any way, she pretty much tells her aunt, you have done nothing but be rude to me and lie and believe your crappy children and blame me for every single thing here, and I'm done being nice to you, and I'm not going to tell anybody that you were nice because that's a lie. Okay? Again, 10-year-old, pop off. I love this for her. At the end of that day, dramatic, filled with anger, crazy stuff happening, she knows that she's going to be leaving soon. Like, she's pretty much getting kicked out of Gateshead and sent off to the school to not be Mrs. Reed's problem anymore. She gets comforted by a woman named Bessie. I think she's a housekeeper or housemaid of some sort. Comforts her. This is like her only ally that she has in this house. Bessie has always looked out for her. She comforts her, gives her a hug, and then takes her back into the house. That afternoon lapsed in peace and harmony, and in the evening, Bessie told me some of her most enchanting stories and sang me some of her sweetest songs. Even for me, life had its gleams of sunshine. Chapter 5. 4 days later, the coach arrives to pick Jane up and take her to the boarding school. Jane refuses to say goodbye to Mrs. Reed, but Bessie gives her an emotional farewell, and I think it tells her that she was the favorite child, like that she prefers her over the other Reed children. The coach pulls up to the Lowood Girls Academy. It is foreboding. It's dreary. It's gray. It is just... Did you ever watch Madeline? Or like, I always read the books Madeline, and I imagine that this is what it was like. I'll put up a screenshot of the book that I particularly remember. But this whole time I was kind of picturing that situation. And even in that one, when it depicts of when they're in the school, I picture that. If you know, you know, if you're my age, you understand. The like headmaster of the school is incredibly rude, incredibly like That's the guy that came and interviewed her. The food sucks. It's not good living conditions. Everybody, like all of the adults are super, super strict, and it's just not a good time. The only light is a teacher named Miss Temple. She's young, she's beautiful, and she's the only one that is actually kind to the girls and like supportive in any way. The only other thing that really happens in this chapter, she befriends a girl named Helen. Helen explains to her that the school is meant for girls who lost one or both of their parents, and it is mostly kept afloat by like benefactors, right? So people who like donate money to the school. And the guy who came and interviewed her, Mr. Brocklehurst, is the like headmaster guy in charge, which we already kind of knew that. Helen ends up getting punished in the middle of class, in the middle of her classroom, and just stand there while everybody stares at her and she gets berated by the teacher. And Jane really admires Helen's like calmness through the situation. Like, she doesn't give any reaction, she doesn't fight back, she just kind of takes it and rolls with the punches. In chapter 6, days go on and it is just terrible. The school's not insulated very well. The girls aren't given enough blankets and uniforms, so they just like freeze their butts off through the night. Helen continues to get picked on by this one particular teacher, the one who punished her in the last chapter, continues just to get berated by this grown-ass woman. It doesn't make any sense. Jane, eventually, she's like, hey, why don't you fight back? Like, why don't you argue? You're innocent. Like, you didn't even do anything. Like, why are you just taking this? And they go on to have the following conversation regarding it, right? Jane asks, do you come a long way from here? I come from a place farther north, quite on the borders of Scotland. Will you ever go back? I hope so, but nobody can be sure of the future. You must wish to leave Lowood. No, why would I? I was sent to Lowood to get an education, and it would be of no use going away until I have attained that object. But that teacher, Mrs. Scatcherd, is so cruel to you. Cruel? Not at all. She's severe. She dislikes my faults. And if I were in your place, I should dislike her. I should resist her. If she struck me with that rod, I should get it from her hand. I should break it under her nose. Probably you would do nothing of the sort, but if you did, Mr. Brocklehurst would expel you from the school. That would be a great grief to your relations. It is far better to endure patiently a smart which nobody feels but yourself than commit a hasty action whose evil consequences will extend to all connected with you. And besides, the Bible bids us return good from evil. But then it seems disgraceful to be flogged and to be sent to stand in the middle of a room full of people. And you are such a great girl. I'm far younger than you, and I could not bear it. Yet it would be your duty to bear it, if you could not avoid it. It is weak and silly to say you cannot bear what is your fate to be required to bear. Okay, translation, right? Jane says, I don't know how you're putting up with being treated like crap. Like, I would fight back if I were in your shoes. And Helen says, I can't. I don't want to hurt my family. I don't want my friends to get in trouble for my actions. I don't want to hurt my family's like reputation or feelings or their wallet if I get sent out of here. And also, like, I'm being punished because I'm not being godly enough. And this is the burden that I was given to bear. Like, I am supposed to endure these things to be a better person. Jane's like, couldn't do that. So this last part, it is weak and silly to say you cannot bear what is your fate to be required to bear, is a banger sentence of essentially, you don't know until you're tested. And if you're meant to do this, like if that's what your path is, then like that's what it is. And that's Helen's view of it, right? She's very, very religious, pious, I believe is the word. She's very religious, very like no nonsense Christian belief, right? So Jane continues. She says, you say you have faults, Ellen. What are they? To me, you seem very good. Then learn from me to not judge by appearances. I am, as Mrs. Scatcherd said, slatternly. I seldom put and never keep things in order. I am careless. I forget rules. I read when I should learn my lessons. I have no method, and sometimes I say, like you, I cannot bear to be subjected to systematic arrangements. This is all very provoking to Mrs. Scatcherd, who is naturally neat, punctual, and particular, which is so sad that this little girl is made to feel bad about these things, but that's part of it, right? A part of a lot of this is this like reflection and discussion about internalized, maybe not guilt, but like kind of like a woman's place in the world and a girl's place in the world, you know, what they're made to feel and the responsibilities put on their backs and this whole entire thing, right? Helen is, I would argue, the epitome of what one should be. Like, she is the cookie cutter, what is expected of these young women, and then Jane is breaking the mold. And so when they befriend each other, Jane gets this, it's almost like a double-edged sword example of what she should be, but what ultimately she doesn't want to be and can't see herself being, right? So this is the beginning of Jane's, I don't know, calling out mistreatment and like how wrong the world is in a way. Jane then goes on to say, okay, you talked about the other horrible teacher, so what about Miss Temple? Like, when she teaches you, do your thoughts wander then? No, certainly not often, because Miss Temple has generally something to say which is newer than my own reflections. Her language is singularly agreeable to me, and the information she communicates is often just what I wished to gain. Well then, with Miss Temple, you are good? Yes, in a passive way. I make no effort. I follow as inclination guides me. There's no merit to goodness. A great deal. You are good to those who are good to you. It is all I ever desire to be. If people were always kind and obedient to those who are cruel and unjust, the wicked people would have it all their own way. They would never feel afraid, so they would never alter, but would grow worse and worse. When we are struck at without any reason, we should strike back again very hard. I am sure we should, so hard as to teach the person who struck us to never do it again. Helen responds, you will change your mind, I hope, when you grow older. As yet, you are but a little untaught girl. But I feel this, Helen. I must dislike those who, whatever I do to please them, persist in disliking me. I must resist those who punish me unjustly. It is as natural as that I should love those who show me affection or submit to punishment when I feel it is deserved. Heathens and savage tribes hold that doctrine, but Christians and civilized nations disown it. How? I don't understand. It is not violence that best overcomes hate, nor vengeance that most certainly heals injury. What is it then? Read the New Testament and observe what Christ says and how he acts. Make his word your rule and his conduct your example. So Jane's like, so what does he say then, Helen? Like, what are you supposed to do? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you and despitefully use you. Then I should love Mrs. Reed, which I cannot do. I should bless her son John, which is impossible. And they continue to have this back and forth where Helen goes on to defend Mrs. Reed, essentially, like Mrs. Reed and John. And she's like, yeah, but I'm sure she's not like a bad woman. Like, you have to be willing to forgive people. And I am very much on Jane's side. From a very young age, like, I see so much of myself in Jane, which is so cool to do for a book that is nearly 200 years old, to have, you know, similar thoughts and thought processes and like views of how the world should work with people from 200 years ago is really, really cool. And these books, especially when they were published, really set a precedence and very early grains of like feminism and women being treated equal and having independence and this whole thing, like having a choice in their life and where their life goes. Again, we'll talk about it later, but The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is one of the first instances, if not the first instance, of a novel exploring a woman who leaves her husband and then goes on to live a much better life. She wasn't just this like widowed lady. She made a conscious decision to leave her abusive husband and then found happiness later. And it is a very beautiful story of like redemption and, I don't know, like trusting your own gut and like protecting yourself and your family and like those near and dear to you. This book does the same thing where there's like a level of, I don't want to call it self-respect because that's not necessarily what it is, but of this like, this is who I am. This is what I believe, and like I'm not going to do anything to go against that. Like, I know what I deserve in life and I'm going to get it. That is incredible to be reading from pieces of literature this old. That is a common thought that has always been there. Obviously it is, but you know what I'm saying? It was just, I don't know, very, very good. What can I say? Chapter 7, Jane has spent a whole quarter at Lowood. It's been difficult. Like I said, the living situation sucks. Like, they are not treated well. It's super cold. The food sucks, etc. And everybody is just like bleh. The students and teachers alike. Over the holidays, I believe everybody else leaves and Miss Temple stays behind with the girls to take care of them. And she gives them like bread and cheese and spoils them, according to Mr. Brocklehurst when he comes back. You know, he says, when you put bread and cheese instead of burnt porridge into these children's mouths, you may indeed feed their vile bodies, but you little think how you starve their immortal souls, i.e., feed them like crap in their human bodies until they repent so that their immortal souls will flourish. Like they'll learn to, abide by the Christian law and be good Christians for the afterlife so they can live, in heaven and live happily. So you have to beat them down until they're good Christians, right? And so actually with saying that, when this edition, this is the second edition, I got it from Gutenberg.org. The Project Gutenberg is like a collection of copyright-free material. Highly recommend. It's all free, open access, super handy, super cool. That's where I got all of these books from. Like I have probably like 30 or 40 classics that I downloaded from Gutenberg. This is the second edition of this book. I downloaded it from there. And in it, Charlotte wrote this like opening letter, right? A preface about this. And the part that I highlighted says, conventionality is not morality. Self-righteousness is not religion. To attack the first is not to assail the last. So in this book, when she's really critical of convention, right? Conventional standard expectations of girls, right? The way that they are expected to treat and conventionally treated. You can critique that as she is in this book. She's not saying that there are like bad morals or that this would lead to bad morals or that what they're doing is bad, but just the kind of the construct of it is. And same thing with this like self-righteousness versus religion, right? To attack self-righteousness is not to attack religion. It's more of critique of the specific situations that she was in and the specific people that she dealt with. She's not portraying like anti-Christian beliefs, right? This is the whole, it's not that I'm not religious, I just don't like organized religion. This is the beginning of that, right? I'm not being anti-religious or anti-Christian. I'm just saying that in these Christian girls' schools, we got treated like shit. So me saying that isn't me being anti-God. Does that make sense? That was some of the basis of the pushback that she got kind of early on. So anyway, Brocklehurst comes back. He says this to Miss Temple. He's like, you're spoiling them. Like you're ruining their, immortal souls or immortal lives or whatever. He goes on to see like curly hair on one of the girls. And then he orders all of the girls' hair to be cut to teach them a lesson in vanity. So now all of these little girls on top of this horrible living conditions essentially gets their heads shaved. This is happening while Mr. Brocklehurst's wife and daughter are there, dressed to the nines, like extravagant clothing, completely spoiled. And so you see the juxtaposition, I guess, right? You see the conflicting belief here. He treats these girls like crap and says they need a lesson in vanity. Really? He's just a hypocrite. Jane, during this whole spiel, ends up dropping something and he turns his attention to her. So he makes her stand on a stool for the rest of the school day and goes on this tirade about how deceitful she is and how she's a liar and this horrible person and nobody should talk to her. Like, she's going to stand on the stool all day. Not a single one of you can talk to her because she's so bad. And so nobody does. Nobody even really looks at her. She just has to stand and just be like ostracized, essentially. Helen is the only one who, will pass by and kind of look at her and at least give her a smile, like a reassurance. And this is where I would just like to say, I wonder if Helen is her friend Ellen, with the little letters that we talked about. Maybe. Or inspired by? Maybe. So in chapter 8, it's 5 p.m. and Jane can finally get off of the stool. When she does, she just cries, like she has a breakdown. Like her reputation is ruined. Now she thinks like she'll never be able to have friends. Like everybody's gonna, again, ostracize her and treat her like crap because of what happened. And Helen, though, comes in clutch, reassures her, and she's like, hey, all the girls here kind of know the way that Mr. Brocklehurst is. Like, I doubt anybody really believes him. Like, they know that he is just lies and kind of sucks, right? They then go and talk to Miss Temple, and she, again, kind of same thing, reassures Jane. Jane opens up to her about her experience at Gateshead and how, Mrs. Reed told Mr. Brocklehurst that she is not to be trusted, that she is deceitful, and how this, like, reputation has followed her, like, because he chose to believe her aunt, her her like horrible aunt. So Miss Temple says, that's okay. Like I can write a letter on your behalf and like speak to your character and try to, clear your name of these like, injustices, like this poor judgment on you. Like I can do my part to try and help out. Miss Temple then goes on to ask Helen how she's feeling, because apparently Helen has had like a pretty bad cough and she's been relatively sick. And there's some like illusion that she has this like long-term illness, sickness thing kind of happening in the background. A week later, Miss Temple gathers all of the student body and tells them that Jane Eyre has been cleared of her charges, right? Like that she's a good person, pretty much. Announces to the school to, again, try to reassure Jane and try and clear her name, quote unquote. And Jane is very relieved by this. And with that, she can focus more on her schoolwork now that she's not so worried about her reputation. Some of the quotes that I pulled. So when Jane is telling Helen about being ostracized and how she thinks all of the girls are going to hate her, Helen says, if all the world hated you and believed you wicked, while your own conscience approved you and absolved you from guilt, you would not be without friends. No, I know I would think well of myself, but that is not enough. If others don't love me, I would rather die than live. I cannot bear to be solitary and hated, Helen. Look here. To gain some real affection from you or Miss Temple or any other whom I truly love, I would willingly submit to have the bone of my arm broken, or to let a bull toss me, or to stand behind a kicking horse and let it dash its foot at my chest. And then Helen goes on to be like, hush, Jane, like you think too much of humanly opinions, like it really only matters what God thinks of you. Okay, Helen. Sorry. That's the advice that she gives her. In chapter 9, spring comes. It gets a little bit warmer, so everybody's a little bit happier, but then typhus affects the school, right? The illness, the disease, and a bunch of the girls get sick, including Helen, who gets very, very sick and needs to be quarantined. While she's dealing with that, Jane befriends a girl named Mary Ann Wilson. They're playing together when they see a doctor and nurse leave like the quarantine building where Helen is. She asks how she's doing, and the nurse says she's not doing good and she's gonna die soon. Oh my God. Jane rushes to Miss Temple, rushes to get to Helen's side so that she can, be with her on her deathbed, essentially. Helen, she's like, oh, like you've come to say goodbye. Jane's like, oh, like, are you going home? Like, you're really sick. That would make sense, like, if you're going home because you're sick. Helen says, yes, to my long home, my last home. Jane, like, gets in bed with her, lays under her quilt, and they just lay together and talk. Helen goes on to say, I'm very happy, Jane, and when you hear that I am dead, you must be sure and not grieve. There is nothing to grieve about. We all must die one day, and the illness which is removing me is not painful. It is gentle and gradual. My mind is at rest. I leave no one to regret me much. I have only a father, and he is lately married and will not miss me. By dying young, I shall escape great sufferings. Oh my God. I had not qualities or talents to make my way very well in the world. I should have been continually at fault. Oh my God. So wow, I want to cry at that. Jane says, but where are you going to, Helen? Can you see? Do you know? I believe. I have faith. I'm going to God. Where is God? What is God? Jane asks. My maker and yours, who will never destroy what he created. I rely implicitly on his power and confide wholly in his goodness. I count the hours till that eventful one arrives, which shall restore me to him and reveal him to me. Jane continues to question this, and she says, you are sure then, Helen, that there is such a place as heaven and that our souls can get to it when we die? I am sure there is a future state. I believe God is good. I can resign my immortal part to him without any misgiving. God is my father. God is my friend. I love him. I believe he loves me. And shall I see you again, Helen, when I die? You will come to the same region of happiness, be received by the same mighty universal parent, no doubt, dear Jane. Again I questioned, but this time only in thought. Where is that region? Does it exist? And I clasped my arms closer around Helen. She seemed dearer to me than ever. I felt as if I could not let her go. I lay with my face hidden on her neck. Presently, she said in the sweetest tone, how comfortable I am. That last fit of coughing has tired me a little. I feel as if I could sleep, but don't leave me, Jane. I like to have you near me. Jane then says, I'll stay with you, dear Helen. Dear is italicized, I just want to note that. I'll stay with you, dear Helen. No one shall take me away. Are you warm, darling? Yes. Good night, Jane. Good night, Helen. She kissed me and I her, and we both soon slumbered. When I awoke, it was day. An unusual movement roused me. I looked up. I was in somebody's arms. The nurse held me. She was carrying me through the passage back to the dormitory. I was not reprimanded for leaving my bed. People had something else to think about. No explanation was afforded then to my many questions, but a day or two afterwards I learned that Miss Temple, on returning to her own room at dawn, had found me laid in the little crib, my face against Helen Burns's shoulder, my arms around her neck. I was asleep, and Helen was dead. Oh my God, I'm crying. Her grave is in Brockleridge churchyard. For 15 years, that's how far in the future we are, right? Adult Jane, this is adult Jane reflecting. Her grave is in Brockleridge churchyard. For 15 years after her death, it was only covered by a grassy mound. But now a gray marble tablet marks the spot, inscribed with her name in the word resurgam, which is Latin for I shall rise again. Okay, that's cool. That's so totally cool. Let me get these tears out of my eyes. Hold on. Oh, young love, platonic or otherwise, that's just so sad. In chapter 10, because she died of typhus, it opens up this investigation into the school. And the school gets blamed for the unhealthy nature of the site, the quantity and quality of the children's food, the brackish, fetid water used in its preparation, the pupils' wretched clothing and accommodations. So Mr. Brocklehurst is replaced by a better administration, and the conditions at the school greatly improve. Like, everything is on the up and up. And for 8 years, Jane continues to study at Lowood under Mrs. Temple's guidance. And for 2 of those years, Jane even became a teacher. During these 8 years, my life was uniform, but not unhappy, because it was not inactive. I had the means of an excellent education placed within my reach, a fondness for some of my studies, and a desire to excel in all, together with a great delight in pleasing my teachers, especially such as I loved, urged me on. I availed myself fully of the advantages offered to me. In time, I rose to be the first girl of the first class. Then I was invested with the office of teacher, which I discharged with zeal for 2 years. But at the end of that time, I altered. She had a good time for 8 years, and then she was just ready to go, right? But when Miss Temple gets married and leaves the school, Jane does as well. She advertises in the Herald newspaper as a governess. She only gets one response to this advertisement, and it's for a 10-year-old girl at a place called Thornfield. Jane accepts the job. Obviously, she doesn't, it's the only option she really has. So she's excited. And before she goes, to begin this new chapter of her life, Bessie, like the house lady from her old house, Bessie and her young son come and visit Jane, and she named one of her daughters after Jane. And she's so proud of her. As a parting note, Bessie says, hey, also, by the way, 7 years ago, one of your uncles stopped by before he moved abroad to say that he was going to go and work as a wine merchant out in Spain. I think Spain, somewhere like that. And just kind of random. She just never knew about it. Mrs. Reed never sent notice about it. Just some long-lost uncle, assumably on her father's side. Just somewhere. In chapter 11, that's where she's headed. She gets to Thornfield. She meets a couple of the people there, and she meets her pupil, Adele. She's the little girl that she's there to, tutor. Miss Fairfax, who runs the house, she kind of gives, a little bit of information about it. So Mr. Rochester, owns the place. He travels a lot for work, and so Miss Fairfax kind of manages the home. Adele is obviously there, the pupil, and she explains that Adele's mother was from an affair he had during his travels, and so she's not in the picture, right? So that's where Jane comes in to teach her and do all this stuff. Miss Fairfax goes on to explain more about the house and how she keeps it tidy all the time because she never knows when Mr. Rochester might appear because of his traveling. You just never really know. And she gets this foreboding feeling, she's kind of intimidated by this idea of him. She's given her a tour of the house. Jane is very impressed. And then they get up to the second floor of it and, kind of showing her the bedrooms and stuff. And there's a stairway that goes up to the attic. And it is just dark and spooky, and Jane's just got a bad feeling about it. And then all of a sudden there's this burst of laughter, really high pitched manic laughter. Jane is what the heck is that? And Miss Fairfax goes on to say that it is one of the servants named Grace Poole. Says that she's a little strange and then quickly changes the subject, like back to Adele. Not the best first impression. That's a little creepy and weird, right? But Jane presses on. In chapter 12, she's getting used to life at Thornfield. You know, she's getting along with Miss Fairfax, with Adele, with everybody. Adele is super smart. She's super cheerful, a little spoiled, you know, a little bit of an attitude sometimes, as one would expect with a rich little only child girl, right? That kind of comes with the territory. But she's a great kid, and Jane's happy, and she's really enjoying her time there. But she's also feeling restless and wanting more. Pulled this quote because I thought this was actually very interesting. But I believed in the existence of other and more vivid kinds of goodness, and what I believed in I wished to behold. Who blames me? Many, no doubt, and I shall be called discontented. I could not help it. The restlessness was in my nature. It agitated me to pain sometimes. Then my sole relief was to walk along the corridor of the third story, backwards and forwards, safe in the silence and solitude of the spot, and allow my mind's eye to dwell on whatever bright visions rose before it. And certainly there were many, and glowing. To let my heart be heaved by the exultant movement, which, while it swelled it in trouble, expanded it with life, and best of all, to open my inward ear to the tale that was never ended, a tale my imagination created and narrated continuously, quickened with all of incident, life, fire, feeling that I desired and had not in my actual existence. It is in vain to say human beings ought to be satisfied with tranquility. They must have action, and they will make it if they cannot find it. Millions are condemned to a stiller doom than mine, and millions are in silent revolt against their lot. Nobody knows how many rebellions, besides political rebellions, ferment in the masses of life which people earth. Women are supposed to be very calm generally, but women feel just as men feel. They need exercise for their faculties and a field for their efforts as much as their brothers do. They suffer from too rigid a restraint, too absolute a stagnation, precisely as men would suffer, and it is narrow-minded in their more privileged fellow creatures to say that they ought to confine themselves to making puddings and knitting stockings, to playing on the piano and embroidering bags. It is thoughtless to condemn them or laugh at them, if they seek to do more or learn more than custom has pronounced necessary for their sex. Damn, okay, right? Translation, if it is needed, it's messed up that women are just expected to stay in the house forever and be happy, and that they should be content with just managing household things. Like, women shouldn't be mistreated for wanting more than that, or like looked down upon for wanting more than that, and it's really crappy that it's not acknowledged that they feel the same as men and like the desire to travel and see more of life and want more from life. The only other thing that's also kind of making her feel a little weird is the continuous random laughter that she's hearing from Grace. And she sees Grace getting some alcohol sometimes, and so she's kind of attributed it to just Grace being an alcoholic up in the attic, just drinking and giggling away. With all of that in mind, Jane is out one night looking at the moon, just thinking about life and things, and she hears somebody on horseback coming. She goes toward the rider, scares him, and he falls off of the horse. She asks if he's okay. They have a little bit of back and forth, and it turns out that that's Mr. Rochester, and that's how she is introduced to him, by knocking him off of his horse. Chapter 13, it's the following day, and Mr. Rochester is dealing with everything going on at the house, and she continues to try to teach Adele. That evening, he calls Jane and Adele to dinner with him, and he asks Jane about herself. Asks her where she's from. She says Lowood and that she was there for 8 years. And he says, 8 years? You must be tenacious of life. I thought half the time in such a place would have done up any constitution. No wonder you have rather the look of another world. I marveled where you had gotten that sort of face. When you came on me in Hay Lane last night, I thought uncountably of fairy tales, and had half a mind to demand whether you had bewitched my horse. He goes on to ask about her family. She says she has none, like, has no aunts and uncles, has no brothers and sisters, and that she was there because Miss Fairfax answered an ad in the newspaper. They go on to have, like, more and more discussion, and he is just not very impressed with what she's bringing to the table, that she was raised in this school and hasn't really seen the world and hasn't traveled and been anywhere, and she's only 18 years old. She's just very young and inexperienced, and she tries to play piano and talk to him and answer other questions, and he is just decidedly not impressed. So at the end, she's talking to Miss Fairfax after the fact, and Miss Fairfax says he's just kind of moody, like that's just kind of who he is. He has painful thoughts, no doubt, to harass him and make his spirits unequal. Jane is like, what does that mean? Like, what spirit, what are you talking about? And she doesn't really get a straight answer. In chapter 14, over the next few days, Jane sees very little of Mr. Rochester until the next time that he summons her and Adele for dinner. And afterward, he's sitting by the fire in his chair, relaxing, and he tells Jane to come and sit next to him and to talk to him more. But then he doesn't talk. And so she's just staring at the side of his face. He says, "You examine me, Miss Eyre. You think me handsome? I should, if I have deliberated, have replied to this question by something conventionally vague and polite, but the answer somehow slipped from my tongue before I was aware. No, sir." By my word, there is something singular about you. You have the air of this little nonette, quaint, quiet, grave, and simple, as you sit with your hands before you and your eyes generally bent on the carpet. And when one asks you a question or makes a remark to which you are obliged to reply, you rap out a round of rejoinder, which, if not blunt, is at least rude. What do you mean by it? Sir, I was too plain. I beg your pardon. I ought to have replied that it was not easy to give an impromptu answer to a question about appearances, that tastes mostly differ, and that beauty is of little consequence or something of that sort. You ought to have replied no such thing. Beauty is of little consequence indeed. And so, under pretense of softening the previous outrage, of stroking and soothing me into placidity, you stick a sly penknife under my ear. Go on. What fault do you find with me, pray? I suppose I have all my limbs and all my features like any other man? Mr. Rochester, allow me to disown my first answer. It was only a blunder. Just so. I think so. And you shall be answerable for it. Criticize me. Does my forehead not please you? So, translations again, in case you guys need it in any way. She accidentally calls him ugly. He's like, are you just rude or are you stupid? Like, what is your problem? She's like, sorry. My bad. And he's like, no, really, you said I was ugly. Like, own up to it. What's ugly about me? Is my forehead ugly? My forehead too big? And eventually he's like, just speak. Talk about literally anything else. Just talk. She says, what about, sir? Whatever you like. I leave both of the choice of subject and the manner of treating it entirely to yourself. Accordingly, I sat and said nothing, thinking, if he expects me to talk for the mere sake of talking and showing off, he will find he has addressed himself to the wrong person. He then says, you are dumb, Miss Eyre. I was dumb still. He bent his head a little towards me and with a single hasty glance seemed to dive into my eyes. Stubborn? He said, and annoyed. It is consistent. I put my request in for the absurd, almost insolent form. Miss Eyre, I beg your pardon. The fact is, once for all, I don't wish to treat you like an inferior. That is, I claim only such superiority as must result from 20 years' difference in age, and a century advance in experience. And it is by virtue of this superiority and this alone that I desire you to have the goodness to talk to me a little now, and divert my thoughts, which are galled with dwelling on one point, cankering as a rusty nail. Seemed an explanation, almost an apology, and I did not feel insensible to his condensation, and would not seem so. He clocks that she's not answering him because he's being rude. He accepts this as an answer, and he's like, okay, fine, sorry. Like, I'm not trying to make you feel stupid. I'm not trying to flex on you, even though he's 38 years old and she's 18. He's like, I just need you to talk to me because, right? He's like, I got some demons in my brain and I just don't want to think right now. Like, please just say something to me. Just talk to me. She says, I'm willing to amuse you, if I can, sir, quite willing, but I cannot introduce a topic because how do I know what will interest you? Ask me questions and I will do my best to answer them. Then, in the first place, do you agree with me that I have a right to be a little masterful, abrupt, perhaps exacting sometimes, on the grounds I stated, namely that I am old enough to be your father, and that I have battled through a varied experience with many men of nations and roamed over half the globe while you have lived quietly with one set of people in one house? Do as you please, sir. That is no answer. Or rather, it is a very irritating, because a very evasive one. Reply clearly. I don't think, sir, you have a right to command me, merely because you are older than I or because you have seen more of the world than I have. Your claim to superiority depends on the use you have made of your time and experience. Damn. He is kind of impressed with this answer, right? She pushes back on him. Pretty much, again, translation, sorry if you don't need this and if you're just like, Kaylee, get the heck on with it. Sorry. But also, I know that English like that can be a little confusing for people or disjointed and you don't really know what's being said. So my interpretation is he is like, do you agree with me being your superior because of age and wisdom? And she says, no, that's actually not valid. That shouldn't be the logic for why. Oh, okay. The conversation goes on. It's kind of just as awkward as that. They're just like quizzing. Well, he's really just kind of quizzing her throughout it. By the end of this conversation, she's just done with it, deeming it useless to continue a discourse, which was all darkness to me, and besides, sensible that the character of my interlocutor was beyond my penetration, at least beyond its present reach, and feeling the uncertainty, the vague sense of insecurity which accompanies a conviction of ignorance. He kept quizzing her, she's feeling stupid, there's no point to continue the conversation, because she's just going to make a fool of herself, essentially, right? Where are you going? To put Adele to bed, it is past her bedtime. You're afraid of me because I talk like a sphinx. Your language is enigmatical, sir, but though I am bewildered, I am certainly not afraid. You are afraid. Yourself dreads a blunder. In that sense, I do feel apprehensive. I have no wish to talk nonsense. If you did, it would be in such a grave, quiet manner I should mistake it for sense. Do you never laugh, Miss Eyre? Don't trouble yourself to answer. I see you laugh rarely, but you can laugh very merrily. Believe me, you are not naturally austere, any more than I am naturally vicious. The Lowood constraint still clings to you somewhat, controlling your features, muffling your voice, and restricting your limbs. And you fear, in the presence of a man and a brother, or father, or master, or whatever you will, to smile too gaily, to speak too freely, or to move too quickly. But in time, I think you will learn to be natural with me, as I find it impossible to be conventional with you. And then your looks and movements will have more vivacity and variety than they dare offer now. I see at intervals the glance of a curious sort of bird through the close-set bars of a cage. A vivid, restless, resolute captive is there. Were it but free, it would soar cloud high. You are still bent on going? It has struck 9, sir. Right. So she doesn't want to look stupid. He says the only reason you're worried about that is because of Lowood, right? Essentially, you've been like beaten down to be this meek, quiet young woman. And if you can grow into confidence and be confident in what you're saying and what you're feeling, you would be phenomenal, right? You'd be a bird and soar to the cloud high. And in time, he hopes to see that. Like, he's been impressed with our conversation so far and the little glimpses of who Jane really is. He's been impressed and wants to talk to her more and talk to her again and hope that they can build that comfort. So is he rude? A little bit. He's a little brash. He's a little rough around the edges, but he wants to befriend her and get her out of her shell. So in chapter 15, Mr. Rochester finally talks about Adele's mother and tells Jane what happened. Basically, he was with the mother. She cheated on him with another man, and then she ran away with yet another man. And then that guy ended up leaving her destitute, which means left her with like no money, no house, no anything, like just pretty much left her on the side of the road with Adele. So he took Adele in. He doesn't think that she's his kid because of everything that the mother was doing, but he still took her in because it's important for children to have stable homes. So then he's like, so with that, like, do you feel differently about me, Jane, knowing that I'm raising a child that's not my own? He expects her to be kind of turned off to this idea or to not respect him because of this. But instead, she's impressed, right? She was an orphan. So she understands, obviously, the hardships that she went through. So she finds it admirable that he took in and that he's giving Adele a good life. That night, she's reflecting about what he told her. Basically, it was really about his, what's the term? Sexual liberatism, sleeping around, right? She's kind of thinking about this idea when she hears the laughter from upstairs again from the attic. And she hears like a hand dragging along the wall outside of her room and gets spooked enough and wanting to find out like who is laughing, like what is Grace doing, what's even going on. So when she opens her bedroom door, she sees that there's smoke coming out from Mr. Rochester's room. So she rushes in there, opens the door, sees that his bed is on fire, goes and gets water, pours it on there, and Mr. Rochester wakes up to her pouring water on his face. And so he accuses her of drowning him, and then he sees the fire and realizes that she saved him. Like, why did she not wake him up first? What do you mean? You would have had to go and find water. Like, I feel like in that time you should have woken him up. Like, he should have. The order of events there is very confusing to me. And then asks if she heard any laughter or if she saw anyone. She's like, I didn't see anybody, but I did hear laughter, and I know that it's Grace Poole. Mr. Rochester just says, just so. Grace Poole, you have guessed it. And when she goes to leave the room, Mr. Rochester thanks her yet again for saving his life, but begs her to not tell anybody what happened. The quote that I pulled from this chapter is when she was in bed that night thinking of him. And was Mr. Rochester now ugly in my eyes in regard to his sexual libertinism or whatever the word was earlier? No, reader. Gratitude in many associations, all pleasurable and genial, made his face the object I best liked to see. His presence in a room was more cheering than the brightest fire, yet I had not forgotten his faults. Indeed, I could not, for he brought them frequently before me. He was proud, sardonic, harsh to inferiority of every description. In my secret soul, I knew that was his great kindness to me was balanced by unjust severity to many others. He was moody too, unaccountably so. I, more than once, when sent to read to him, found him sitting in his library alone, with his head bent on his folded arms, and when he looked up, a morose, almost malignant scowl blackened his features. But I believed that his moodiness, his harshness, and his former faults of morality, I say former for now, he seemed corrected of them, had their source in some cruel cross of fate. I believed he was naturally a man of better tendencies, higher principles, and purer tastes than such as circumstances had developed, education instilled, or destiny encouraged. I thought there were excellent materials in him, though for the present they hung together somewhat spoiled and tangled. I cannot deny that I grieved for his grief, whatever that was, and would have given much to assuage it. Basically, yeah, he has his faults, but I see the good in him, and I think he's full of these faults because life has dealt him a difficult hand, right? Like, he's been through some stuff. Like, I know he's just struggling, but he's a good guy under all of that. Or he would be a better man if these, like, bad things hadn't happened to him. In chapter 16, Jane is surprised that nobody in the house is really reacting to this whole fire situation and that Grace Poole still works there. So Jane confronts Grace about this whole situation. Grace denies it and says that she was dreaming and she doesn't know what she's talking about, and obviously nothing happened because Miss Fairfax didn't wake anybody up. She's just still so confused about why Grace is there and why she hasn't been fired. And Jane's like, she's not pretty enough. This is so horrible. She's not pretty enough for Mr. Rochester to, like, have affection for her, but maybe they used to, right? Like, maybe they used to be a thing, or they used to hook up or something, and so maybe he has, like, a soft spot for her. And so then Jane is like, why does that make me feel kind of weird? And realizes that she has some romantic feelings developing for Mr. Rochester. She realizes this just in time to hear that he'll be going away for a week to go and visit Lord Ingram, who has a beautiful daughter named Blanche. And this leads Jane to ask all of the servants about what Blanche looks like. Is she, pretty? Does she have blonde hair? What kind of nose does she have? Because she wants to compare herself. And she realizes that she's foolish for thinking that she even has a chance with Mr. Rochester, but she just needs to know. So she ends up, like, sketching out a photo based on all of this feedback that she got from the servants and house people, draws out a photo of what she looks like, of what Blanche looks like, and then compares it to what she looks like to see who's, like, the prettier person. Oh my gosh. The only quote that I pulled was, "It does good to no woman to be flattered by her superior, who cannot possibly intend to marry her, and it is madness in all women to let a secret love kindle within them, which, if unreturned and unknown, must devour the life that feeds it, and if discovered and responded to, must lead into miry wilds whence there is no extrication." Oof, duh. You can't get feelings for your superior. It's not superior in, like, a literal boss sense, but superior in, like, class or, like, somebody being better than you. So, like, somebody out of your league. To, have this, like, burning crush for somebody out of your league either will eat you alive and go like unrequited, or they like you back and then it just burns like a wildfire. In chapter 17, Mr. Rochester is gone. He's in Europe visiting the Lord and having this week-long visit with Blanche. Jane, in the meantime, is trying to kind of tamp down these feelings that she's developing for him and to not be that way. When she finally thinks that maybe she's kind of turning a corner and maybe getting over her thing for him, they get a letter in the mail that Mr. Rochester will be returning with a bunch of people and they'll be staying in the house for quite a while. She has 3 days to get the house in order and prepped for all of this. So in the bustling craziness of all of the servants all working to get the house in order and everything prepared, she overhears people gossiping about Grace and talking about how she makes so much more money than all of the other servants, like 3 times as much money as anybody else does. And somebody makes the comment about how, like, of course she gets paid that much. Like, I can't imagine filling her shoes. Like, I can't imagine doing what she has to do, not even for all the money she gets. Jane's like, what does that even mean? So the party arrives. It's chaotic. It's aristocratic. It's fine dining and entertaining and beautiful stuff. And she's just pretty much watching from the sidelines as Mr. Rochester is talking to all of these beautiful women, and she is just this like festering ball of jealousy. She keeps trying to leave and like not deal with it, but every time she tries to step away, Mr. Rochester catches her and he's like, no, like party, like you're, celebrate with us, like be a part of this. Some quotes about when she is in this room and witnessing him. Most true is that beauty is in the eye of the gazer. My master's colorless olive face, square, massive brow, broad and jetty eyebrows, deep eyes, strong features, firm, grim mouth, all energy, decision, will, were not beautiful according to rule, but they were more than beautiful to me. They were full of an interest, an influence that quite mastered me, that took my feelings from my own power and fettered them in his. I had not intended to love him. The reader knows I had wrought hard to extirpate from my soul the germs of love that there detected, and now at the first renewed view of him, they spontaneously arrived green and strong. He made me love him without looking at me. Oh, that's such a good quote, right? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I finally got rid of all of my feelings for him, but I just can't help it. The second I see him, I'm just this jealous monster that loves him. He made me love him without looking at me. So she's watching him interact with guests, compared him with his guests. What was the gallant grace of the Lynns, the languid elegance of Lord Ingram, even the military distinction of Colonel Dent, contrasted with his look of native pith and genuine power. I had no sympathy in their appearance, their expression, yet I could imagine that most observers would call them attractive, handsome, imposing, while they would pronounce Mr. Rochester at once harsh-featured and melancholy looking. I saw them smile, laugh. It was nothing. The light of the candles had as much soul in it as their smile, the twinkle of the bell as much significance as their laugh. I saw Mr. Rochester smile. His stern features softened. His eye grew both brilliant and gentle, its ray both searching and sweet. He was talking at the moment to Louisa and Emmy Eshton. I wondered to see them receive with calm that look which seemed to me so penetrating. I expected their eyes to fall, their color to rise under it, yet I was glad when I found that they were in no sense moved. He is not to them what he is to me, I thought. He is not of their kind. I believe he is of mine. I am sure he is. I feel akin to him. I understand the language of his countenance and movements. Though rank and wealth sever us widely, I have something in my brain and heart, in my blood and nerves that assimilates me mentally to him. Did I say a few days since that I had nothing to do with him but to receive my salary at his hands? Did I forbid myself to think of him in any other light as a paymaster? Blasphemy against nature. Every good, true, vigorous feeling I have gathers impulsively around him. I know I must conceal my sentiments. I must smother hope. I must remember that he cannot care much for me. But when I say that I am of his kind, I do not mean that I have his force to influence and spell to attract. I mean only that I have certain tastes and feelings in common with him. I must then repeat continually that we are forever sundered. And yet, while I breathe and think, I must love him. I love that so much. They're not of his kind. In chapter 18, the guests are still there, party's still going. She realizes, like, he is going to propose to Blanche. I have told you, dear reader, that I have learned I have learnt to love Mr. Rochester. I could not unlove him now, merely because I found that he had ceased to notice me, because I might pass hours in his presence, and he would never once turn his eyes in my direction. Because I saw all his attentions appropriated by a great lady, who scorned to touch me with the hem of her robes as she passed, who, if ever her dark and imperious eye fell on me by chance, would withdraw it instantly, as from an object too mean to merit observation. I could not unlove him, because I felt sure that he would soon marry this very lady, because I read daily in her a proud security in his intentions respecting her, because I witnessed hourly in him a style of courtship which, if careless and choosing rather to be sought than seek, was yet, in its very carelessness, captivating, and in its very pride, irresistible. There's nothing to cool or banish love in these circumstances, though much create despair, much too, you will think, reader, to engender jealousy. If a woman in my position could presume to be jealous of a woman in Miss Ingram's, but I was not jealous, or very rarely. The nature of the pain I suffered could not be explained by that word. Miss Ingram was a mark beneath jealousy. Damn, she was too inferior to excite the feeling. Damn. Pardon the seeming paradox. I mean what I say. She was very showy, but she was not genuine. She had a fine person, many brilliant attainments, but her mind was poor, her heart barren by nature. Nothing bloomed spontaneously on that soil. No unforced natural fruit delighted by its freshness. She was not good. She was not original. She used to repeat sounding phrases from books. She never offered nor had an opinion of her own. She advocated a high tone of sentiment, but she did not know the sensations of sympathy and pity. Tenderness and truth were not in her. Too often she was betrayed by this, by the undue vent she gave to a spiteful antipathy she had conceived against little Adele, pushing her away with some contumelious epithet, oh my gosh, these words, if she happened to approach her, sometimes ordering her from the room and always treating her with coldness and acrimony. Other eyes beside mine watched these manifestations of character, watched them closely, keenly, shrewdly. Yes, the future bridegroom, Mr. Rochester himself, exercised over his intended as a ceaseless surveillance. And it was from this sagacity, oh my god, this guardedness of his, this perfect, clear consciousness of his fair one's defects, this obvious absence of passion in his sentiments toward her, that my ever-torturing pain arose. I saw he was going to marry her, for family, perhaps for political reasons, because her rank and connections suited him. I felt he had not given her his love, and that her qualifications were ill-adapted to win from him that treasure. This was the point. This was where the nerve was touched and teased. This was where the fever was sustained and fed. She could not charm him. Oh my god. Translation. That lady's fake AF and she's rude to Adele, and he's just gonna settle and marry her for connections and make everybody's life miserable, and he would never be able to love this woman. It would literally just be marrying her for the title. Oh my god. That's crazy. In chapter 19, Jane is in the library and a woman comes in who reads her fortune. She tells Jane that she is cold, sick, and silly. You are cold because you are alone. You are sick. You are sick because the feelings, the highest and the sweetest given to man, keeps far away from you. And you are silly because, suffer as you may, you will not beckon to it to approach, nor will you stir one step to meet it where it waits you. The woman tells her that happiness is within reach. She just needs to do something about it. So then the fortune teller goes on to tell Jane that Blanche was disappointed that Mr. Rochester wasn't as rich as she thought that he was, and then goes on to talk more about Mr. Rochester, and she realizes that the fortune teller is Mr. Rochester. He's just dressed up weird. And so she's obviously upset and embarrassed by this, and says as much. She's like, you have been trying to draw me out or in. You have been talking nonsense to make me talk nonsense. It is scarcely fair. In my note, I have something about Mr. Mason visited, but I don't think I said that, and I don't remember when it happened exactly. I think it might have been while he was gone. Some random guy stopped by the house and asked about if that's where Mr. Rochester lived, and then was sent away basically since he wasn't there. Anyway, so she tells him this. He gets a little distressed, and he says, I wish I were in a quiet island with only you, and trouble and danger and hideous recollections removed from me. Later that night, Mr. Rochester is setting up Mr. Mason in one of the rooms at Thornfield. I guess he came back or whatever. Like I said, I don't remember the exact thing with this guy. He comes up later though, so he's like important. I just don't remember how he got introduced. That night, somebody yells for help. The whole house wakes up. They don't really know what's going on. Turns out they're just like, oh no, it was just somebody had a nightmare. Don't worry about it. Everybody just go back to sleep. Mr. Rochester pulls Jane aside and asks if she gets like queasy around blood. When she says no, he takes her into Mr. Mason's room, and Mr. Mason had gotten attacked. He had gotten stabbed in the arm and he's like bleeding profusely, but bandages him up and tries to like, hold the pressure while he goes and gets a surgeon to stitch up this crazy wound in his arm. Once the doctor's in there, talking to Mr. Mason and stuff, he says, she bit me. She worried me like a tigress when Mr. Rochester got the knife from her. Hello? So again, Jane is like, what the frick is happening? And Mr. Rochester kind of wraps up that whole thing. Mr. Mason gets some medicine. He's going to be okay. The doctor's taking care of him. And Mr. Rochester takes Jane outside to the orchard to have a conversation with her. He has her sit down on a bench. He sits next to her and says, Jane, I called to aid your fancy. Suppose you were no longer a girl, well-reared and disciplined, but a wild boy indulged from childhood upwards. Imagine yourself in a remote foreign land. Conceive that you there commit a capital error, no matter of what nature or from what motives, but one whose consequences must follow you through life and taint all your existence. Mind, I don't say a crime. I am not speaking of shedding of blood or other guilty act which might make the perpetrator amenable to the law. My word is error. The results of what you have done become in time to you utterly insupportable, but you take measures to obtain relief. Unusual measures, but neither unlawful nor culpable. Still, you are miserable, for hope has acquitted you on the very confines of life. Your sun at noon darkens in an eclipse which you feel will not leave it until the time of setting. Bitter and base associations have become the sole food for your memory. You wander here and there seeking rest in exile, happiness in pleasure, I mean in heartless, sensual pleasure, such as dulls intellect and blights feeling. Heart weary and soul withered, you come home after years of voluntary banishment. You make a new acquaintance. How or where, no matter, you find in the stranger much of the good and bright qualities which you have sought for 20 years and never have before encountered. And they are all fresh, healthy, without soil and without taint. Such society revives, regenerates. You feel better days come back, higher wishes, purer feelings. You desire to recommence your life and to spend what remains to you of days in a way more worthy of an immortal being. To attain this end, you are justified in overleaping an obstacle, a mere conventional impediment, which neither your conscience sanctifies nor your judgment approves. He paused for an answer, and what was I to say? Oh, for some good spirit to suggest a judicious and satisfactory response. Vain aspiration. The west wind whispered in the ivy around me, but no gentle Ariel burrowed its teeth as a medium of speech. The birds sang in the treetops, but their song, however sweet, was inarticulate. Again, Mr. Rochester propounded his query. Is the wandering and sinful but now rest-seeking and repentant man justified in daring the world's opinion in order to attach to him forever his gentle, gracious, genial stranger, thereby securing his own peace of mind and regeneration of life? All of this, again, translation time, in case you're lost, he messed up really bad. An error, not a crime, just an error that he made when he was younger that has followed him through his entire life. And he wants to move on, and he is pretty much seeking Jane's permission to do that, to move on, which is kind of essentially, I'm assuming, with her, right? He found peace and happiness and he wants to pursue that. And so he's indirectly trying to atone for this error that he made. And like, I don't know, there's some like lying by omission here that's happening that you'll understand later, but it's just interesting. Basically, she just says to search for answers from God, not from other people. When they're going back inside, he says, "You're quite pale with your vigils, Jane. Don't you curse me for disturbing your rest?" "Curse you? No, sir." Shake hands in confirmation of the word. "What cold fingers. They were warmer last night when I touched them at the door of the mysterious chamber. Jane, when will you watch with me again?" "Whenever I can be useful, sir. For instance, the night before I am married. I am sure I shall not be able to sleep. Will you promise to sit up with me and bear me company? To you I can talk of my lovely one, for now you have seen her and know her. Yes, sir. She's a rare one, is she not, Jane? Yes, sir. A strapper, a real strapper, Jane, big, brown, and buxom, with her hair just as the ladies of Carthage must have had. Bless me. There's Dent and Lynn in the stables. Go in by the shrubbery through the wicket. As I went one way, he went another, and I heard him in the yard saying cheerfully, Mason, got the start of you. All this morning, he was gone before sunrise. I rose at 4 to see him off. So, ew. He wants Jane to hang out with him before he gets married, and then lies to everybody that Mr. Mason left really early in the morning. I mean, he's just trying to brush the problem under the rug. In chapter 21, Jane thinks about Bessie and how Bessie told her that it was like bad luck to have dreams of children. The entire next week, that's all Jane dreams of. Every single night, just dreaming of children. Turns out it really is a bad omen, because eventually she gets notice that her cousin, John Reed, right, the D-bag from chapter 1 that like pushed her down and blamed her and got her sent to the freaking Lowood school in the first place, has died of like alcoholism, and Mrs. Reed is on her deathbed and has requested that Jane, come and say goodbye. Jane goes to ask Mr. Rochester for permission to go and visit her. He is with Blanche, and so when he looks up and sees Jane in the doorway, he kind of grimaces and gives kind of a weird reaction, and he's very reluctant about allowing her to leave, but he does eventually approve, and he's like noticeably upset that she gave him such a cold goodbye. So he says, You go tomorrow then? Yes, sir. Early. Shall you come down to the drawing room after dinner? No, sir. I must prepare for the journey. Then you and I must bid goodbye for a little while? I suppose so, sir. And how do people perform that ceremony of parting, Jane? Teach me. I'm not quite up to it. They say farewell, or any other form they prefer. Then say it. Farewell, Mr. Rochester. For the present. What must I say? The same if you like, sir. Farewell, Miss Eyre. For the present. Is that all? Yes. It seems stingy to my notions, and dry and unfriendly. I should like something else, a little addition to the rite. If one shook hands, for instance, but no, that would not content me either. So you'll do no more than say farewell, Jane? It is enough, sir. As much goodwill may be conveyed in one hearty word as in many, very likely, but it is blank and cool, farewell. When Jane gets to Gateshead, she meets her other two cousins, really nothing too crazy about them. But when she goes up to the room to say, goodbye and like bid farewell to Mrs. Reed, she is like babbling incoherently and starts talking about Jane like as if she wasn't there. Like she's so like sick and disoriented that she doesn't know it's Jane. And talking crap about her and how she was like the uncle's favorite child and she was just like troublemaker and like terrible person. And then mentions how Jane's uncle, the guy from Spain, like Bessie came and said goodbye to her and was like, hey, he stopped by 7 years ago and tried, to say goodbye before he went off to wherever. He sent a letter 3 years ago saying that he wanted to adopt Jane. But Mrs. Reed was like so bitter and pissy about the whole situation that she never forwarded the letter to Jane or like let her know what was going on. He wanted to adopt her so that he could give her his inheritance. Jane, while upset about this, also realizes that she's on her deathbed and tries to, do the adult thing. And she says, I long earnestly to be reconciled to you now, and offers Mrs. Reed her like full forgiveness and everything. But she rejects it. Mrs. Reed absolutely refuses to be on good terms with Jane, and she dies that night. She had only been granted like a week of leave, but she decides to stay at Gateshead for an entire month because she's just feeling anxious about going back to Thornfield, dealing with Mr. Rochester, dealing with him getting married. She stays at Gateshead for a month. She gets a letter from Miss Fairfax telling her that the guests are all gone and Mr. Rochester has gone off to London to go and get a new carriage or something. So Jane says, okay, I guess it's finally time for me to go home. When she does finally get back, she runs into Mr. Rochester and says, thank you, Mr. Rochester, for your kindness. I'm strangely glad to get back to you, and wherever you are is my home, my only home. I walked on so fast that even he could hardly have overtaken me had he tried. Little Adele was half wild with delight when she saw me. Mrs. Fairfax received me with her usual plain friendliness. Leah smiled, and even Sophie bid me a hello with glee, which those are just other people who work in the house. This was very pleasant. There is no happiness like that of being loved by your fellow creatures and feeling that your presence is an addition to their comfort. Oh. In chapter 23, Jane is walking through the orchard and she runs into Mr. Rochester and she tries to like scurry away before he spots her, but he does and he tells her to come closer. He asks if she enjoys Thornfield, if it feels like home to her, and she says yes. He says, you must have become in some degree attached to the house, you who have an eye for natural beauties and a good deal of the organ of adhesiveness. I am attached to it, indeed, and though I don't comprehend how it is, I perceive you have acquired a degree of regard for that foolish little child Adele too, and even for the simple Dame Fairfax. Yes, sir, in different ways. I have an affection for both. And would you be sorry to part with them? Yes. Pity, he said, and sighed and paused. It is always the way of events in this life, he continued presently. No sooner have you got settled in a pleasant resting place than a voice calls out to you to rise and move on, for the hour of the repose has expired. Must I move on, sir? Must I leave Thornfield? I believe you must, Jane. I am sorry, but I believe indeed you must. This was a blow, but I did not let it end me. Well, sir, I shall be ready when the order to march comes. It comes now. I must give it tonight. Then you are going to be married, sir? Exactly. Precisely. With your usual acuteness, you have hit the nail straight on the head. Soon, sir? Very soon, that is, Miss Eyre. He was going to say my love. So he's essentially saying, yeah, sorry, I'm getting married and you have to leave. He's wanting to get married within a month, and she says, thank you. I'm sorry to give... Oh, no need to apologize. I consider that when a dependent does her duty as well as you have done yours, she has a sort of claim upon her employer for a little assistance. For any little assistance he can conveniently render to her. Indeed, I have already, through my future mother-in-law, heard of a place that I think will suit. It is to undertake the education of 5 daughters of Mrs. Dionysius O'Gall of Bitterment Lodge, Connaught, Ireland. You'll like Ireland, I think. They're such warm-hearted people there, they say. It is a long way off, sir. No matter. A girl of your sense will not object to the voyage or the distance. Not the voyage, sir, but the distance. And then the sea is a barrier from what, Jane? From England and from Thornfield and from you, sir. I said this almost involuntarily, and with as little sanction of free will, my tears gushed out. I did not cry so as to be heard, however. I avoided sobbing. The thought of Mrs. O'Gall in Bitternut Lodge struck cold to my heart, and the colder the thought of all the brine and foam, destined, as it seemed, to rush between me and the master of whose side I now walked, into the coldest remembrance of the wider ocean. Wealth, caste, custom intervened between me and what I naturally and inevitably loved. It is a long way, I said again. It is, to be sure. And when you get to Bitternut Lodge, Connaught, Ireland, I shall never see you again, Jane. That's morally certain. I never go to Ireland, not having myself much of a fancy for the country. We have been good friends, Jane, have we not? Yes, sir. And when friends are on the eve of separation, they like to spend the little time that remains to them close to each other. Come, we'll talk over the voyage and the parting quietly half an hour or so, while the stars enter their shining life up in heaven yonder. Here is the chestnut tree. Here is the bench as its old roots. Come, we will sit there in peace tonight, though we should never more be destined to sit there together. It is a long way to Ireland, Jane, and I am sorry to send my little friend on such weary travels, but I can't do better. How is it to be helped? Are you anything akin to me, do you think, Jane? I could risk no sort of answer by this time. My heart was still. Because, he said, I sometimes have a queer feeling in regard to you, especially when you are near me as now. It is as if I had a string somewhere under my left ribs, tightly and inextricably knotted to a similar string situated in the corresponding quarter of your little frame. And if that boisterous channel, the 200 miles or so of land come broad between us, I am afraid that the cord of communication will be snapped, and then I've a nervous notion I should take to bleeding inwardly. As for you, you would forget me. That I never should, sir, you know. Impossible to proceed. Jane, do you hear that nightingale singing in the wood? Listen. In listening, I sobbed convulsively, for I could not repress what I endured no longer. I was obliged to yield, and I was shaken from head to foot with acute distress. When I did speak, it was only to express an impetuous wish that I had never been born or never come to Thornfield, because you were sorry to leave it. The vehemence of emotion, stirred by grief and love within me, was claiming mastery and struggling for full sway and asserting a right to predominate, to overcome, to live, rise, and reign at last. Yes, and to speak. I grieve to leave Thornfield. I love Thornfield. I love it because I have lived in it a full and delightful life, momentarily at least. I have not been trampled on. I have not been petrified. I have not been buried with inferior minds and excluded from every glimpse of communion with what is bright and energetic and high. I have talked face to face with what I reverence, with what I delight in, with an original, a vigorous, an expanded mind. I have known you, Mr. Rochester, and it strikes me with terror and anguish to feel I absolutely must be torn from you forever. I see the necessity of departure, and it is like looking on the necessity of death. Where do you see the necessity? He asked suddenly. Where? You, sir, have placed it before me. In what shape? In the shape of Miss Ingram, a noble and beautiful woman, your bride. My bride? What bride? I have no bride. But you will have. Yes, I will. He set his teeth. Then I must go. You have said it yourself. No, you must stay. I swear it, and the oath shall be kept. I tell you, I must go, I retorted, roused to something like passion. Do you think I can stay to become nothing to you? Do you think I am an automation, a machine without feelings, and I can bear to have my morsel of bread snatched from my lips and my drop of living water dashed from my cup? Do you think because I am poor, obscure, plain and little that I am soulless and heartless? You think wrong. I have as much of a soul as you and full as much heart. And if God had gifted me with some beauty and much wealth, I should have made it hard for you to leave me. Oh my God. As it is now, for me to leave you, I am not talking to you through the medium of custom, conventionalities, nor even of mortal flesh. It is my spirit that addresses your spirit, just as if both had passed through the grave and we stood at God's feet, equal as we are. Oh my God. Okay, I need to translate really quick if you guys are lost in what's happening. He's pretty much told her that she needs to leave. She says, but I can't leave. It's so far away. And he says, you have to because I love you so much. And this is the only way that we can not have a relationship. And she kind of admits to her feelings for him. And that results in him wanting to take it back and him saying for her to stay. And he's like, okay, never mind. Actually, you need to be around. Actually, I regret this whole conversation. Just stay here. And she says, no, I have to leave. You're literally getting married and it's going to kill me to be here. And at the very end, that last part that she is telling him, we are akin, right? She was saying earlier that they're made of the same substance. It is my spirit that addresses your spirit, just as if both had passed through the grave and we stood at God's feet, equal as we are. God, take away class and education and experience and all this other stuff, soul to soul. Oh, that's so good. So he says, as we are, repeated Mr. Rochester. So, he added, enclosing me in his arms, gathering me to his breast, pressing his lips to my lips. So, Jane. Yes, so, sir, I rejoined, and yet not so, for you are a married man, or as good as a married man, and wed to one inferior to you, to one with whom you have no sympathy, whom I do not believe you truly love, for I have seen and heard you sneer at her. I would scorn such a union, therefore I am better than you. Let me go. Where to, Jane? To Ireland? Yes, to Ireland. I have spoken my mind and can go anywhere now. Be still, Jane. Don't struggle so, like a wild, frantic bird that is rendering its own plumage in its desperation. I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will, which I now exert to leave you. Another effort set at my liberty, as I stood erect before him. And your will shall decide your destiny, he said. I offer you my hand, my heart, and a share of all of my possessions. You play a farce which I merely laugh at. I ask you to pass through life at my side, to be my second self and best earthly companion. For that fate, you have already made your choice and must abide by it. And then, okay, right? So then he says, again, he's back to this whole thing of, okay, actually, I regret it. I love you. Let's make this work. She's like, it's too late, dude. You basically already married. And also, you already basically broke up with me. We weren't really together, but final nail in the coffin, you told me to get lost. We're not doing this. He says, okay, we need to calm down. How about that? Come to my side, Jane, and let us explain and understand one another. I will never again come to your side. I am torn away now and cannot return. But, Jane, I summon you as my wife. It is you only that I intend to marry. I was silent. I thought he mocked me. Come, Jane, come hither. Your bride stands between us. He rose and with stride reached me. My bride is here, he said again, drawing me to him, because my equal is here, and my likeness. Jane, will you marry me? Still, I did not answer, and I writhered myself from his grasp, for I was still incredulous. Do you doubt me, Jane? Entirely. You have no faith in me? Not a whit. So, a little bit more back and forth. Eventually, she believes him. like she turns his face to see it in the moonlight, and she realizes he's like flushed and worked up and like blushing basically. So she's like, he does mean it. He does want to marry me. I think they kiss out there. They like run inside because it starts to storm. And when they get inside, he just can't stop kissing her, in the like little entry area. And when she looks up, Mrs. Fairfax is at the top of the stairs watching them and is completely shocked at what's happening. The next morning, Jane finds out from Adele that lightning had struck the chestnut tree that Jane and Mr. Rochester were just sitting under the night before. The heck? They could have died. They almost died. That's crazy. In chapter 24, she is just feeling good. She's better. She's like, I know, like, I don't feel as plain and boring because he thinks that I'm attractive and he wants to get married. And the idea of getting married, of being Jane Rochester, feels like a fairy tale. Like a dream, like something that she never imagined that she would actually have. He goes on to try to spoil her, with being his future bride and all. He like wants to give her a bunch of jewelry and all sorts of things, and she doesn't want any of it. That's just not like who she is or what she ever grew up with at all. And he makes a joke about how he will put her on a chain like a prized gem. Weird thing to joke about that we'll come back to later. The only things to really note that happen in this chapter is Mrs. Fairfax does not agree with the wedding, like does not think that it should happen, because there's some stuff that Jane doesn't know. Like there's some secrets that Mrs. Fairfax doesn't want to reveal, but she's like, you don't know everything about him. And also he's literally twice your age and it's not appropriate. Jane also wants to write a letter to her uncle, the one with the inheritance, to let her know what's going on, with the idea that, like, if he's going to give her his inheritance, that would make her Mr. Rochester's, like, social equal, so she wouldn't feel so bad about being this, like, orphaned poor girl. Like, she would actually have something to her name for this wedding, or for this marriage. In chapter 25, it's the night before the wedding, and Jane is just getting this weird feelings. Mr. Rochester's out on business that night, and whenever Mr. Rochester returns, Jane tells him about something that happened while he was gone. So whenever her wedding dress and veil got delivered, she hung up the garments in her room, and then that night she heard this weird scuttling noises. And when she got up, a woman, tall and large with thick and dark hair hanging long down her back, was in her room. So Jane watched as this woman put on the veil and then tore it in half. Mr. Rochester dismisses this concern that she brings up and says that it was just a dream. Her anxiety about the wedding, she must have just kind of mixed up this picture of Grace Poole. Maybe she was just thinking of Grace or something. And so then that leads Jane to being yeah, so hey, speaking of which, why is she in your house? Why are you keeping this crazy lady in your home? And he says, why I keep such a woman in my house? When we have been married a year and a day, I will tell you, but not now. Which again is so ominous. The day before the wedding, Mr. Rochester tells her that she will not have any more nightmares. That night, she'll dream of happy love and blissful union. This prediction was but half fulfilled. I did not indeed dream of sorrow, but as little did I dream of joy, for I never slept at all. With little Adele in my arms, I watched the slumber of childhood, so tranquil, so passionless, so innocent, and waited for the coming day. All my life was awake and astir in my frame, and as soon as the sun rose, I rose too. I remember Adele clung to me as I left her. I remember I kissed her as I loosened her little hands from my neck, and I cried over her with a strange emotion, and quitted her because I feared my sobs would break her still sound repose. She seemed the emblem of my past life, and I was now to array myself to meet, the dread but adored type of my unknown future day. In chapter 26, it's the day of the wedding, and there's just weird vibes. Super weird vibes. Mr. Rochester's super irritable and in a big rush just to get to the church and get this whole thing over with. And she's just getting kind of a weird feeling. In the middle of the vows, you know how the preacher does the whole customary, are there any objections? He paused, as custom is. When is the pause after that sentence ever broken by reply? Not perhaps once, but in 100 years. The priest, who had not lifted his eyes from the book, and had held his breath but for a moment, was proceeding. His hand was already stretched toward Mr. Rochester, as his lips unclosed to ask, "Will thou have this woman for thy wedded wife?" when a distinct and near voice said, "The marriage cannot go on. I declare the existence of an impediment." What? What do you mean there's an impediment? This guy from London, Mr. Briggs, stops the wedding to say that Mr. Rochester is already married. He got married 15 years ago, and this is where some questionable, problematic stuff comes in. But he married a Creole woman in Jamaica, and he has a signed letter from Mr. Mason, the guy who she attacked. Turns out she was the one that attacked him, by the way. Mr. Mason has a testimony that the woman is still alive, or she was as of 3 months ago, living in Thornfield's attic. So all that crazy giggling, the laughing has been Bertha. It's not Grace. Grace is the person that has been assigned to keep Bertha company and maintain and take care of her. That's why she's making so much money. But Bertha's there. She's alive in the attic. She has been this whole time. She's the one with the crazy laughter. Oh my God, what are you talking about? But sorry, we know that. I know that, so I got carried away. But during the wedding, everybody's pushing back. They're like, dude, literally nobody has seen this woman. What are you talking about? She doesn't exist. You're just making stuff up. Mr. Mason says, no, she does. She's in the attic. Uh-oh, we can prove it to you. So the wedding gets called off. Oh my God. So they go up to the attic and they find up there Grace Poole bent over a fire cooking. And in the corner of the room, there is this, how is it described? A figure runs back and forth. What it was, whether beast or human being, one could not at first sight tell. It groveled, seemingly on all fours. It snatched and growled like some strange wild animal, but it was covered with clothing, and a quaintly of dark grizzled hair, wild as a mane, hid its head and face. Yeah, so obviously poor representation of mental health and of other races. Not a great way to talk about people, just acknowledging that. How did Mr. Macy even find out about the wedding? How did this guy from London even get here? Turns out Mr. Mason and John Eyre, Jane Eyre's uncle, are work associates. So John had gotten the letter from Jane, was worried about the wedding because I guess he knew this, he knew this about Mr. Rochester. He probably did some research on Mr. Rochester when he heard that that's where his niece was at, right? So he knew about this craziness. So he said, hey, Mr. Mason, you need to go down there and vouch for this whole situation then, because this is crazy, right? We need to, Jane needs to get out of that situation. She can't marry this. That night, Jane is just overwhelmed in her room. As far as she's concerned, her life is just destroyed. All that hope and the love and everything that she thought was in front of her has been for naught. It has been with a deceitful man who treats this woman horrendously and just has been a liar and wasn't going to tell her, right, until a year and a day after their wedding. He wasn't even going to talk about the fact that he has another wife. Dude, okay. So she just thinks about everything, gets overwhelmed, and then pretty much does the whole Jesus take the wheel. Calm rushes over her and she says, let go and let God. There's nothing else I can do. Chapter 27, when she wakes up, she realizes, she must leave Thornfield. She cannot do this. But when she leaves her room, she runs into Mr. Rochester. You came out at last, he said. Well, I have been waiting for you so long and listening, yet not one movement have I heard, nor one sob. 5 minutes more of that death-like hush, and I should have forced the lock like a burglar. So you shun me? You shut yourself up and grieve alone? I would rather you had come and upbraided me with vehemence. You are passionate. I expected a scene of some kind. I was prepared for the hot rain of tears, only I wanted them to be shed on my breast. Now a senseless floor has received them, or your drenched handkerchief. But I err. You have not wept at all. I see white cheek and faded eye, but no trace of tears. I suppose then your heart has not been weeping blood? Well, Jane, not a word of reproach, nothing bitter, nothing poignant, nothing to cut a feeling or sting of passion. You sit quietly where I have placed you and regard me a weary, passive look. Jane, I never meant to wound you thus. If the man who had but one little lamb was dear to him as a daughter, that ate his bread and drank of his cup and lay in his bosom, had by some mistake slaughtered it at the shambles, he would not have rued his bloody blunder more than I now rue mine. Will you ever forgive me? Reader, I forgave him at the moment and on the spot. There was such deep remorse in his eyes, such true pity in his tone, such manly energy in his manner, and besides, there was such unchanged love in his whole look. I forgave him all, yet not in words, not outwardly, only at my heart's core. You know I am a scoundrel, Jane? Ere long he inquired wistfully, wondering, I suppose, at my continued silence and tameness, the result rather of weakness than of will. Yes, sir. Then tell me so roundly and sharply, don't spare me. I cannot. I am tired and I am sick. Oh my God. He's trying to not win her back necessarily, but, be like, oh, stay with me. And she's like, no, I must leave. Whole back and forth. And she says, sir, you are inexorable for that unfortunate lady. You speak of her with hate, with vindictive antipathy. It is cruel. She cannot help being mad. Jane, my little darling, so I will call you, for so you are. You don't know what you are talking about. You misjudge me again. It is not because she is mad I hate her. If you were mad, do you think I should hate you? I do indeed, sir. Then you are mistaken, and you know nothing about me, and nothing about the sort of love which I am capable. Every atom of your flesh is as dear to me as my own. In pain and sickness, it would be dear. Your mind is my treasure, and if it were broken, it would be my treasure still. If you raved, my arms should confine you, and not a strait waistcoat. Your grasp, even in fury, would have a charm for me. If you flew at me wildly as that woman did this morning, I would receive you in an embrace, at least as fond as it would be restrictive. I should not shrink from you with disgust as I did from her. In your quiet moments, you should have no watcher, and no nurse but me, and I could hang over you with untiring tenderness, though you gave me no smile in return, and never weary of gazing into your eyes, though they had no longer a ray of recognition for me. Continued back and forth. He's just saying that he loves her and doesn't want her to leave, and her saying that she must go. I resumed my notice of you. There was something glad in your glance and genial in your manner when you conversed. I saw you had a social heart. It was the silent schoolroom. It was the tedium of your life that made you mournful. I permitted myself the delight of being kind to you. Kindness stirred an emotion soon. Your face became soft in expression. Your tones gentle. I liked my name pronounced by your lips. Oh, I love that. I liked my name pronounced by your lips in a grateful, happy accent. I used to enjoy a chance meeting with you, Jane. At this time, there was a curious hesitation in your manner. You glanced at me with a slight trouble, a hovering doubt. You did not know what my caprice might be, whether I was going to play the master or be stern or friend and be benignant. I was now too fond of you, often to stimulate that first whim, and when I stretched my hand out cordially, such bloom and light and bliss rose to your young, wistful features. I had much ado often to avoid straining you then, and there to my heart. Don't talk any more of those days, sir. No, Jane. What necessity is there to dwell on the past when the present is so much surer and the future much brighter? You see now how the case stands, do you not? After a youth and manhood passed half in unutterable misery and half in dreary solitude, I have for the first time found what I can truly love. I have found you. You are my sympathy, my better self, my good angel. I am bound to you with a strong attachment. I think you good, gifted, lovely. A fervent, a solemn passion is conceived in my heart. It leans to you, draws you to my center and spring of life, wraps my existence about you, and kindling and pure, powerful flame fuses you to me in one. Oh my goodness, he just continues, dude. She's like, I really am leaving. He says, you're leaving me? Yes. You will not come. You will not be my comforter, my rescuer, my deep love, my wild rose, my frantic prayer, are all nothing to you? What unutterable pathos was in his voice. How hard it was to reiterate firmly, I am going. Jane. Mr. Rochester, withdraw then. I consent, but remember, you leave me here in anguish. Go up to your own room, think over all I have said, and Jane, cast a glance on my sufferings. Think of me. He turned away. He threw himself on the face of the sofa. Oh, Jane, my hope, my love, my life. Broke in anguish from his lips, then came a deep, strong sob. I had already gained the door, but reader, I walked back as determinedly as I had retreated. I knelt down by him. I turned his face from the cushion to me. I kissed his cheek. I smoothed his hair with my hand. God bless you, my dear master. God keep you from harm and wrong, direct you, solace you, reward you well for your past kindnesses to me. Little Jane's love would have been my best reward, he answered. Without it, my heart is broken. But Jane will give me her love. Yes. Nobly, generously. Up the blood rushed to his face. Forth flashed the fire from his eye. Erect he sprang. He held his arms out, but I evaded the embrace, and at once quitted the room. Farewell was the cry of my heart as I left him. Despair added, farewell forever. Oh my God. So that night, right, she's up in her room, she's packing everything, and the chapter ends with, gentle reader, may you never feel what I then felt. May your eyes never shed such stormy, scalding, heart-wrenching piercing tears as poured from mine. May you never appeal to heaven in prayers so hopeless and so agonized as in that hour left my lips. For never may you, like me, dread to be the instrument of evil to what you wholly love. Oh my God. Dude, these quotes are so good. The instrument of evil to what you wholly love? Are you kidding me? So, right, we're tracking. I know a lot of that, like I read a lot from this section, but point being, she's leaving him. He loves her so much. That whole chapter was so long of him just saying how in love with her that he is and how he'll be a better man, and everything's complicated, but it's not complicated with her. But she knows she has to go because this is crazy. And then from here, I'll go a little faster because this video is taking forever. I guess I really am only doing Jane Eyre today. So chapter 28, she's off heading up to Ireland. She runs out of money very quickly though and is really, really struggling. Tries asking for employment, can't find any, ends up having to beg for food, trying to trade some of her belongings with different housekeepers for food and to stay at places, and it is just very, very difficult. She ends up seeing like a house that has a light on. She goes to it, knocks on the door, asks if, she can stay there, like just begging for some type of warmth or if they have bread or something, like really anything. They turn her away. She starts like crying, wailing, and then eventually a guy named St. John comes and he takes pity on her and takes her inside. And then it's Diana and Mary are the two sisters, and then St. John is the brother. And they end up having dinner together, but St. John is very, very strict. And she introduces herself as Jane Elliot to them, and then pretty much collapses and just like passes out. So in chapter 29, it's over the next 4 days. She is just super, super sick from being in the cold and traveling and the stress and the, emotional distress of everything that has happened. And Diana and Mary like nurse her back to health. St. John continues to be like very distant, rude, cold, and very adamant that she needs to find like permanent living arrangements and it will not be in this house. By the 4th day, she's feeling better. She's talking to Mary and Diana and tells them more about her life and that she is educated and she comes from a better background than I think what they were expecting, which leads to this quote: "Prejudices, it is well known, are most difficult to eradicate from the heart whose soil has never been loosened or fertilized by education. They grow there, firm as weeds among stones." Hannah had been cold and stiff indeed at first. Latterly, she had begun to relent a little, and when she saw me come in tidy and well-dressed, she even smiled. That is, again, a quote that is timeless. "Prejudices, it is well known, are most difficult to eradicate from the heart whose soil has never been loosened or fertilized by education. They grow there firm as weeds among stones." Wow, that is, like, again, just timeless quote. Anyway, she also learns more about them. Their father was rich and like ended up spending all his money on like stupid stuff, and so now they're kind of in a weird situation. Their mother passed away. And then their father had passed away like 3 weeks ago. And then I think their mother died when they were a lot younger or something. In chapter 30, she's still with them. She's getting closer and closer to Mary and Diana. And we learn more and more about St. John. He's like a very, very strict religious man who wants to go overseas and be a missionary. And it's just kind of a slice of lifey, building relationships, talking about religion and living situations of various people with different backgrounds and life experiences, right? Just more like social commentary more than anything for these couple of chapters. But at the end of chapter 30, St. John comes home and tells his sisters that their Uncle John has died and left them nothing, that all of his money has gone to some other unknown relative, which is kind of weird. And then in chapter 31, Jane has, been trying to see life from a different perspective and to like, get used to this life where she's at now, but she is really questioning her decision to leave Mr. Rochester, like if it was the right thing, if, she should go back, and if that would be better than going to Ireland or doing these like odd jobs and crazy stuff, like will she ever be as happy as she was? In chapter 32, Jane ends up finding work at another school, and so she's teaching there, getting adjusted to the community, and everybody's always happy to see her, super smiley, like it's a good situation objectively, but she's just not feeling satisfied from it. And of course, like every day that she gets further away from Mr. Rochester, she is slowly but surely coming to terms with this like breakup and everything that happened. She's drawing when she runs into St. John, or St. John runs into her or something. and they're talking, and she's like, yeah, you should propose to this woman that he's like indicated that he has a crush on. And he's like, her, I can't marry her. Like, she wouldn't be good as a missionary's wife. Like, I would need somebody as, you know, stable and steadfast as you are, Jane. Like, not that woman. And then he looks at her drawing, sees something on the corner, and then like tears it off and just leaves. Okay, that's kind of weird. In chapter 33, it all comes to a head. Turns out on that drawing, Jane had accidentally signed Jane Eyre, not Jane Elliott in the corner, like her little artist signature. She used her actual name. He realizes who she is. And turns out Mr. Briggs, the guy that stood up at the wedding and like objected to it, has been looking for her because her Uncle John has died. Turns out it's the same Uncle John as St. John and the two sisters. They're cousins. Her Uncle John has left her 20,000 pounds. She confirms that she is Jane Eyre. He realizes it because of the little piece of paper. Mr. Briggs obviously recognized her. There's this whole thing. She decides that she is going to split the inheritance between all of them. So she, Diana, Mary, and St. John will each get like 5,000 pounds, which is so sweet. In chapter 34, it's winter break at the school, so Jane is just pretty much relaxing at home. She's hanging out with the family. She's happy. Everybody's all feeling good. They've got money. They've got comfort. They've realized their family. She's got a job. She feels integrated into the community. Everything is going well. But St. John is super grumpy because that woman that he had a crush on, who he said he couldn't marry anyway, is getting married to a local farmer, and so he's very bitter about it. And she's studying German that night or at some point during this break, and St. John sees it, and he's like, hey, you should learn Hindi so that you can travel with me on my missionary work. And she says, yeah, actually, that'd be kind of cool. Like, I'll go see the world with you. And he kisses her, and she realizes in that moment that it wasn't like an actual kiss, and it wasn't passionate, and she would never be able to love him like that. And so when he goes on to ask her to marry him, she says no, trying to make a deal with her almost about it. And like complimenting her on her like usefulness and how good of a missionary's wife that she would be. And she just keeps refusing because she's like, I am not going to marry a man who doesn't love me. Like, you would just be marrying me out of, you know, convenience and me like checking certain boxes, but you're not in love with me. Like, I'm not doing it. He's like, you're denying God's wishes. And the quotes that I pulled from this section, she's thinking about marrying him, and she says, shall I? I said briefly, and I looked at his features, beautiful in their harmony, but strangely formidable in their still severity. At his brow, commanding, but not open. At his eyes, bright and deep and searching, but never soft. At his tall, imposing figure, and fancied myself in idea his wife. Oh, it would never do. As his curate, his comrade, all would be all right. I would cross oceans with him in that capacity, toil under eastern suns and Asian deserts with him in that office, admire and emulate his courage and devotion and vigor, accommodate quietly to his masterhood, smile undisturbed at his ineradicable ambition, discriminate the Christian from the man, profoundly esteem the one and freely forgive the other. I should suffer often, no doubt, attached to him only in this capacity. My body would be under rather a stringent yoke, but my heart and mind would be free. I should still have my unblighted self to turn to, my natural, unenslaved feelings with which to communicate in moments of loneliness. There would be recesses in my mind which would be only mine, to which he never came, and sentiments growing there fresh and sheltered, which his austerity could never blight, nor his measured warrior march trample down. But as his wife, at his side always, and always restrained and always checked, forced to keep the fire of my nature continually low to compel it to burn inwardly and never utter a cry. Though the imprisoned flame consumed vital and vital, this would be unendurable. Oh my God. So the whole, like, she won't marry, she has to be in love. He doesn't love her. She doesn't love him like that. Like, she would have to, like, put herself in this little box to be his wife, and that is just not an option. The quote from this section that gets pulled a lot is, I would always rather be happy than dignified. Chapter 35, St. John just, it's like weeks have gone by, and St. John just continually asks her to marry him, and he just doesn't understand. And so eventually she says, before I said it because you did not love me, Now I reply, because you almost hate me, and if I were to marry you would kill me. You are killing me now. Jane confesses that she's thinking about going back to Mr. Rochester, if only just to see what has happened to him in the time that she has been gone. The night goes on and she's listening to John as he prays, and she's just, I don't know, kind of thinking about life. But at that moment, she hears Mr. Rochester's spirit calling to her from a great distance, crying, "Jane, Jane, Jane," concerned for his well-being. She gets this overwhelming feeling that he needs her, and so she cries out, "I am coming." What the frick? In chapter 36, she leaves at dawn to go and get to Mr. Rochester as quickly as she can, knowing that there's something wrong, something has happened. She takes a coach to Thornfield. She's reflecting over the last year of her life, since she's been at Thornfield, everything that happened there since she left, and she's been with her cousins, and just everything. It's just been crazy how much of a transformation that she has had. She left Lowood School as this very meek, timid, well-mannered girl, and she has come up to denying marriages, leaving somebody that she loved, really having her own opinion on things and being vocal and really just having a voice in general. And it is just amazing, right? And so she's just reflecting on all of this. When she pulls up to Thornfield, she feels like she's coming home, but when she actually sees it, it is charred. The house had caught fire. So she goes to a nearby inn, motel, hotel, Holiday Inn, and figures out what happened. Turns out Bertha had set fire to the house several months ago, and Christ, apparently she got up on the roof somehow and jumped off the roof to unalive herself. Oh my God. But she learns that the fire had really badly maimed and blinded Mr. Rochester. He is crippled is the word that they use. And now he's living in a manor in a place called Ferndean, where he's cared for by 2 elderly servants. And so obviously, immediately, that's exactly where she goes. She rushes over there to go and be reunited with him. Our second to last chapter. We're near the end, I promise. This has been the longest video ever. I did not expect this to go so long. She gets to this house. As she's approaching the building, she sees Mr. Rochester come outside, and she is just enamored by him. He's as broody as ever, but he also has this crazy scowl on his face, and he is looking around. He's been blinded, right? So it's a very blank expression, and he's trying to walk around and refuses help from people, and is just obviously very lost, but obviously also a man of great pride that doesn't want to admit that he needs help or needs anything, and just, you know what I mean, generally just depressed and kind of hateful as he had been previously, if not 10 times worse now. She ends up seeing one of the people that takes care of him, Mary. She worked at Thornfield, so she recognizes her. She goes and talks to this lady for a little while. Eventually Mr. Rochester goes back inside, goes to his room, and she continues to talk to this woman, eventually saying, "Hey, go in there and tell him that somebody wants to talk to him. Don't tell him it's me, though." She says, "I don't think he's gonna want to see you. He refuses to see everybody." She tries anyway. The answer's the same. Mr. Rochester wants to know who wants to see him and what the business is. And so Jane says, "Okay, that's fine. Give me the dinner tray, and I'll go and deliver it to him." The parlor looked gloomy. A neglected handful of fire burnt low in the grate, and leaning over it, with his head supported against the high, old-fashioned mantelpiece, appeared the blind tenant of the room. His old dog Pilot lay on one side, removed out of the way and coiled up as if afraid of being inadvertently trodden upon. Pilot pricked up his ears when I came in, and then he jumped up with a yelp and a whine and bounded toward me. He almost knocked the tray from my hands. I set it down on the table and then patted him and said softly, "Lie down." Mr. Rochester turned mechanically to see what the commotion was, but he saw nothing. He returned and sighed. "Give me the water, Mary," he said. I approached him with the now only half-filled glass. Pilot followed me, still excited. "What is the matter?" "Down, Pilot," I said again. He checked the water on its way to his lips and seemed to listen. He drank and put the glass down. "This is you, Mary, is it not?" "Mary's in the kitchen," I answered. He put out his hand with a quick gesture, but not seeing where I stood, he did not touch me. "Who is this?" he demanded, trying, as it seemed, to see with those sightless eyes, unavailing and distressing attempt. "Answer me, speak again," he ordered imperiously and aloud. "Will you have a little more water, sir?" I spilled half of what was in the glass. "Who is it? What is it? Who speaks?" "Pilot knows me, and John and Mary know I am here. I only came this evening, I answered. Great God, what delusion has come over me? What sweet madness has seized me? No delusion, no madness. Your mind, sir, is too strong for delusion, your health too sound for frenzy. And where is the speaker? Is it only a voice? Oh, I cannot see, but I must feel, or my heart will stop and my brain will burst. Whatever, whoever you are, be perceptible to the touch, or I cannot live. He groped. I arrested his wandering hand and imprisoned it in both of mine. Her fingers, he cried, her small, slight fingers. If so, there must be more of her. A muscular hand broke from my custody. My arm was seized, my shoulder, neck, waist. I was entwined and gathered to him. Is it Jane? What is it? This is her shape, this is her size, and this her voice, I added. She is all here, her heart too. God bless you, sir. I am glad to see you near again. Jane Eyre, was all he said. My dear master, I answered, I am Jane Eyre. I have found you out. I come back to you. In truth, in flesh, my living Jane, you touch me, sir. You hold me, and fast enough, I am not cold like a corpse, nor vacant like air am I. He goes on this whole thing. He's like, my living darling. It is a dream, such dreams as I have had at night when I have clasped her once more to my heart as I do now and kissed her as thus, and felt she loved me and trusted that she would not leave me, which I never will, sir, from this day. Never will, says the vision, but I always woke and found it an empty mockery, and I was desolate and abandoned, my life, dark, lonely, hopeless, my soul athirst and forbidden to drink, my heart famished, never to be fed. Gentle, soft dream nestling in my arms now, you will fly too, as your sisters have all fled before you, but kiss me before you go. Embrace me, Jane. Oh, so then they kiss, and then he actually realizes, like, oh my God, you're actually here. And she's like, yeah, I am here, and I will stay with you. They go on to have a conversation. She tells him about where she's been the last couple of months, that she got the inheritance from her uncle, that she's like this like independent woman now. And he is just saddened by it. And he's like, why would you stay with me though? Like, why would you, I'm quoting the book here, like waste your life on a like disabled old man? Like, why wouldn't you go and like find happiness and joy with like a healthy young suitor? And obviously the answer is, she loves him. You are no ruin, sir, no lightning-struck tree. You are green and vigorous. Plants will grow about your roots, whether you ask them or not, because they take delight in your bountiful shadow. And as they grow, they will lean toward you and wind up around you because your strength offers them a safe prop. Again, he smiled. I gave him comfort. You speak of friends, Jane. Yes, friends. She was talking about them, like, being friends and stuff. He goes on to say, but Jane, I want a wife. Yeah, okay. She's like, do you, sir? Yes. Is that news to you? Of course. You said nothing about it before. Is it unwelcome news? That depends on circumstances, sir. On your choice. Which you shall make for me, Jane. I will abide by your decision. Choose then, sir. Her who loves you best. I will at least choose her I love best, Jane. Will you marry me? Yes, sir. A poor blind man whom you will have to lead about by hand? Yes, sir. A crippled man, 20 years older than you, whom you will have to wait on? Yes, sir. Truly, Jane? Most truly, sir. Oh, my darling, God bless you and reward you. Mr. Rochester, if I ever did a good deed in my life, if I ever thought a good thought, if I ever prayed a sincere and blameless prayer, if ever I wished a righteous wish, I am rewarded now. To be your wife is for me to be happy as I can be on earth. Because you delight in sacrifice. Sacrifice? What do I sacrifice? Famine for food, expectation for content. To be privileged to put my arms around what I value, to press my lips to what I love, to repose on what I trust. Is that what makes a sacrifice? If so, then certainly I delight in sacrifice, and bear with my infirmities, Jane, to overlook my deficiencies, which are none, sir, to me. I love you better now, when I can really be useful to you, than I did in your state of proud independence, when you disdained every part but that of the giver and protector. He goes on to tell her about how the night previous, or whenever it was, how he was like despaired and crying out to her, and how she's like, did you say it out loud? That you called for me aloud? He says, yes. They heard each other's words. From hours away. They love each other so much. Reader, it was on a Monday night near midnight that I too had received the mysterious summons. Those were the very words by which I replied to. I listened to Mr. Rochester's narrative, but made no disclosure in return. The coincidence struck me as too awful and inexplicable to be communicated or discussed. If I told anything, my tale would be such as must necessarily make a profound impression on the mind of my hearer, and that mind, yet from its sufferings too prone to gloom, needed not the deeper shade of the supernatural. I kept these things then, and pondered on them in my heart. Oh my gosh. And so in the very last chapter, in the conclusion, another famous line, the conclusion opens, "Reader, I married him." It's so cute. She wrote to her cousins and to the school that she worked at previously immediately to say what I had done, fully explaining also why I had thus acted. Diana and Mary approved of the step unreservedly. Diana announced that she would just give me time to get over the honeymoon and then she would come and see me. She had better not wait until then, Jane, said Mr. Rochester, when I read her letter to him. If she does, she will be too late, for our honeymoon will shine our life long. Its beams will only fade over your grave or mine. Okay, shut up. She's narrating this novel from 10 years from that moment, right? So she's like 29 years old, I guess, when she's narrating this. She's happily married. He's still partially blind, but he did regain some of his sight after 2 years, and he regained it just in time to be able to see their son. They have 2 kids now, but he got his sight back just in time to meet his son. Why is that? I'm literally crying. That's so sweet. So, yeah, this was probably one of my longest videos ever. I was not expecting that. Big Jane Eyre fan, turns out. And this wasn't even the one that I liked. I liked this one. I would probably say The Tenant of Wildfell House, Jane Eyre, and then Wuthering Heights. Just in terms of like if I had to rank them, but they're all like so good in and of themselves. Anyway, what a cute story. But yeah, so if you've ever wondered what Jane Eyre was, that's this book. And I guess with that note, I guess I know what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of Mondays. Yeah, this was fun. I love this stuff so much. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you like the series, if you have any recommendations. I have a whole list of books that I want to do for this. Trust me, obviously, there's too many classics to go around. There's so much I want to talk about. I don't plan on these all being this long. These are truly the exception because of my fascination and my love that I have for these women. Whenever I do the bell sprout jar, I'm sure that video will also be just as long. Who knows, dude? Honestly, I just can't shut up. I don't know how to do these videos in fast. I can't do any of this fast. I love books. I love yapping. I can't help it. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said, comment, like, subscribe. You know the drill. Let me know what you want to see next time. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.